Just one minister, she seems to be delayed in a lift or something somewhere. We'll start shortly. Arrive. indicate to the people outside we're starting as well. We'll just get them inside. Good morning. My colleagues, we can kick off the meeting. If you can place on record that with the time that we started. Colleagues, let me just express a word of welcome from my side. I'm Thomas Walters. I've been, as you can recall, elected as the committee chairperson for police oversight, community safety, arts, sports and culture. This is the police oversight and community safety component. You would have seen that we will have a follow-up, a similar kick-off with the other department that falls under the purview of this committee. But I would like to start with, first of all, the members introducing themselves. We don't all necessarily know one another yet. And then I would like to ask the department and the minister to also formally introduce themselves, and we will be kicking off with the agenda then. This is I describe it as a kick-off meeting to get a starting point. The purpose of this is to make sure that we have the same information in front of us, get an overview of the department, get an overview of the APPs, which is included in the presentation. And then I would like to put a process in place, an inclusive process in place where we look at oversight visits for the committee as well to kick. We don't have to decide the oversights, all of them today, but to initiate a process where everyone can give their inputs of what priority areas we would like to consider. So that's the agenda. We will also, at 10:15, there's a bit of flexibility there. We'll see how the meeting goes, but we will also have a quick break just to recharge the batteries. But maybe if we can start with Member Kasim, if I can, we can start and work our way around the table like this. So if you can just indicate who you are, your party, and whether you're a full or an alternate member, and the rest is up to you. Thank you very much.
No problem. Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the members and to everyone else as well. I'm Member Aisha Kasim, representing the EFF, main member. Thank you.
Good morning, members, Chair. I'm Donita Stevens. I'm representing the Patriotic Alliance. Thank you.
Greetings to all. My name is Dwayne Jacobs. I'm from the National Colored Congress. I'm the alternate member. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Morning, Minister. Morning, colleagues. I'm Member Boyson, and I'm a member of this committee, and I'm representing the Democratic Alliance. Thank you.
Member of this committee representing the African National Congress. Not GNU.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Minister, officials, and all honourable members. My name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander, and I'm a permanent member on this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, everybody. My name is Benedicta van Minnen. I am from the DEA, and I'm a permanent member of this committee. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Wasim Matthews, Procedural Officer.
Right, I introduced myself, Robert Thomas Walters, Chair of the committee.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Milton Arends. I'm acting HOD in Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety, normally head of IT in the Department of the Premier.
Good morning, members. I'm Andre Marie, Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety, and I must say it's wonderful to be here this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, members. Nuran Khalan from the Directorate Strategic Services and Communication, Police Oversight and Community Safety.
Colleagues, then without any further ado, let's get into the presentation. So over to the department and the minister.
Okay, Minister, you're going to have a few opening remarks.
Thank you so much. I just want to mention that we had a strategic session yesterday and they're going for today. And the ministerial goals that I've set for the department, I'm going to mention 4 that is in line with my priorities. But the priorities differ a little bit more. And I'm only having my performance agreement on Friday with the Premier, and then I won't say release, but I will release those priorities again after the performance agreement with the Premier. But the ministerial goals is improve the relationship between SAP City and the Western Cape government. MOU between spheres of government coming soon. We had our first meeting with National Minister Machuno and with City, Alderman JP Smith, Jordan Lewis, myself, and Hield, our acting HOD, and then Advocate Pillay from our office. So we had the first presentation at the cabinet last week on Wednesday, and they will send through the detailed draft after a memorandum of understanding after the national minister had to look at it, and they will send it back. So I will inform you after the signing of that document what exactly it entails. We will not see tribalism, posture, etc. in this, and we will address the differences between us. That is more or less the MOU. Then I've asked for more frequent crime stats by SAPS. The preference is to receive it monthly. You know, if we receive it every 3 months, or, you know, it's almost like a history lesson. If you have it monthly, it's much better. I receive homicide stats every week from our department. And in a sense, it's quite daunting, our homicide. So I would like to have it more monthly so that you can have an overall look and see, you know, like the paper yesterday said, 61,000 GBV cases, not follow up, nothing happened. So it's daunting once, and that's national. It's not only in our province. So I would like to have a more hands-on approach with the stats. And then also the Western Cape must get its fair share of police officers. So we're driving that with the devolution of powers on the other side. So it's the 12% police officers that I think is our fair share, and then also the devolution of powers with the city. We're doing that with the city. Not the 12%, but the devolution of powers with the city. Then that's what's very important for me, is to raise the morale of our SAPS officers at our stations. I want to visit all the SAPS stations. I did some already, and it's not not to blame. It's to look where we can help and what we can put in place to make it easier for our SAPS officials to be more effective in their work situation. And the visit, as I said, is all about improving the service. And then the questions is from HOD.
No, that's
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'll go into the presentation. As I said, the presentation covers our strategic focus going forward, taking into account this is a new term. And whilst we have the APP that was drafted under the previous minister, and also it's still part of the previous term, we need to understand that this new term and the new strategic plan overlaps now with the previous APP that we have. So we will be making changes to the plan as we're flying, because it's new things that we need to have, that we need to introduce. The minister is of the view that we cannot continue doing the same things over and over again and expect a different outcome. So we need to introduce some new things. So I'll just go into discussion on, just give some background of our current realities, and then also how we perceive the department going forward in the department's role. So currently we have a culture of violence. We have many cultural issues within our province, but one thing that's for certain is a culture of violence reigning in our communities, and that is still is. And the violence is becoming more complex. Organized crime is expanding, and it's also changing the way that they're doing things. At the recent SAPS, can we call it an imbizo that we had, Minister, in Hanover Park, a stakeholder engagement where the national minister and SAPS and the province and city and all the stakeholders met, it was mentioned that one of the gangs, as said, the Fancy Boys there, and that's a report from SAPS, they're not changing into becoming, their members becoming salaried employees. So they actually get salary for being members of these gangs. And as a result, they're now switching from the one gang to the other. And that caused a lot of violence at the moment. And that sparks violence because Fancy Boys, as they call them, wants to take over the whole of the province, and they want to be the only ones. And as I said, if you're going to get a salary and a guaranteed salary, then you'll move over to them. So there are several high-level prosecutions that's also underway, which causes gaps of leadership within the community. And that, in terms, once again, contribute to the violence that we're experiencing at the moment. Extortion, I don't think I need to mention anything about extortion. It's growing. It's a huge issue. We've heard about the beer house case recently within Long Street. So there's quite a few. And then also in terms of even our contracts that we have in the building industry and the work that we want to do in the communities, not only government, but also private sector, subject to extortion. Now, the key drivers of violence in the Western Cape are youth gangs and firearms, and the root causes of unemployment. So, and people can't find jobs, so they're not economically active and they need to find ways to sustain themselves. High school dropout rates, lack of recreational skills development activities, and for youth, and then substance abuse. And we are working with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport and also with education on reintroducing regular sports within the schools at the moment. And so there's some collaboration on that side. The challenges that we have with the communities is that they're disempowered by the gangs and the violence that they're experiencing. And communities are organizing this themselves, but need more resources. So we have the community, the neighborhood watches and the community policing forums, but they need resources and they need to be skilled in order to counter what's happening within our communities. They've become desensitized to the psychological impact that crime has. We have situations where people are killed on a daily basis, and the children, the youngsters, they're desensitized to them. Some of them, we might think that they do not need it, but they feel that they do not need psychological or psychosocial support. But it's happening every day. And we have the release of high-risk parolees and end-of-term prisoners that come into the environment that once again create an instability in the environment. As it relates to our municipalities and SAPs, they're not adequately capacitated and resourced. And when we talk about municipality, we're not just talking about the city of Cape Town, we're talking about the rural municipalities also. And we need to make sure that we strengthen the rural municipalities, because what's happening now is that the gangs are moving to Drakensberg, Oversight, because if it becomes too hot here, they move over to the metros or the municipalities just outside of the city and they operate from there. And if they need to flee, they flee from Elsies to Drakensberg. That's the challenge that we're experiencing. In our recent engagements with the municipalities, one of the managers indicated that they now have a spike in gang violence in their areas, in Paarl specifically, because of this shift. And our municipalities and SAPs are not using tech in the daily crime and safety operations, but that's changing. And I'll engage and I'll give some context to that. We have varied levels of law enforcement maturity in municipalities, and that's a challenge. So in our engagement, which our minister attended the full 2 days in Prince Albert, where we met with the municipalities and the law enforcement entity, the challenge was raised when you look at the law enforcement officer at a municipality in, let's take the extreme, Machikama, he'll have certain colors in terms of what he's wearing, whether it's black or khaki or blue, doesn't matter. But when you go to Bito, there'll be a different colors that the person wearing, different type of uniform, different branding. And there was agreement that we will be working towards same uniform. They'll identify themselves by the badge and the lapel, because that's where they'll have the unique identifier. But that the uniform and the cars and the branding on the cars is the same, so that when you meet a police, municipal law enforcement officer in Machikama and in Bito or in Beaufort, you'll know that that's a municipal law enforcement officer, because look and feel is the same. The challenge that they also have is the ranks and the titles differ. And also the structures differ. So we need some uniformity in that space. And the comment that was made there is that our gangsters are more organized than our official law enforcement. And we need to get that right. We need to get more organized. We need to share intelligence. And also, even within municipalities, once they cross a border from the one municipality to the other, that municipal law enforcement officer cannot do any work in a neighboring municipality. So we need to look at how do we have powers for the district so that if a law enforcement officer is on his way from Cape Town and he passes, say, Swartland and is on his way to Machikama, that he can still do some law enforcement if something happens. But currently, that's not the case. He must wait until he's in his jurisdiction before he can really do something. But those are things that we're taking up with the municipalities and obviously at the national level. And there's the perennial problem that we have. It's a poor control over seized arms, and that's something that we need to be working on. So in terms of the workplace security, which is also one of our functions, so we're responsible for the security services within provincial government. We have a shared service that we provide to all provincial government departments. So we are struggling to maintain the continuity of essential services whilst we're managing our internal safety concerns. And that's a challenge that we're addressing and that we're dealing with on a daily basis. But there's also the rising internal threats, the cybersecurity, cyber attacks, the violence in the workplace, inefficient emergency preparedness, the occupational health and safety matters that need to be addressed. So those are challenges that we're dealing with, and we need to make sure that we have uninterrupted services so that the critical services that people need when they come to our service points, that those services are on. And we say that we want to make sure that people do not travel for 20, 30, 40 kilometers, pay large amounts of money to get here, and then our doors are closed. Or we tell people we're offline. I suppose we all have had experience of that in some other departments. So what we will be doing also is we're looking at the data and radio connectivity between outside of the metro. So the metro is, the city of Cape Town is well funded. And they have brilliant systems. They have the EPIC system, they have brilliant systems and communication systems. But we need to look outside of the city and strengthen those municipalities. So what we're looking at is we want to strengthen the data communications or the communications outside of the metro between the different districts and the municipalities and the local authorities, and then also from them to the neighborhood watches and the farm watches. I was, when we were in Prince Albert and I spoke about neighborhood watches, I was told you need to speak about neighborhood watches and farm watches in the same breath. Because we tend to think of neighborhood watches in our communities where that's densely populated, but we also need to have a focus on the farm watches. And I was properly corrected at that sense. So, members, I'm sure you'd have heard about our Premier's commitment in 2019, 2020 that we will reduce the murder rate by 50%. So it's an aspirational target. And when you listen to the Premier, says we just want to reduce, the murder rate by just 2,000. And 2,000 is already a lot. 2,000 is quite a high number. Currently, we way over 4,000 a year of murders. Last week, our murder rate shot up to 115 again for the week. So whilst the target is aspirational, it's something that we have to do. It's something that we need to aspire to, something that we need to focus on. And yes, even if we do not get to that 50%, we need to make sure that that trajectory that you see there, that red line, that it starts dropping in the right direction. And that's what we need to focus on. So the idea is to streamline our efforts and focus our efforts into those areas where there's really high homicide rates and start to bring that graph down and bring it down. If you can, like when you're in school, if you score low marks in some of your subjects and want to improve your overall average, focus on those subjects where you score the lowest mark and we get a higher average. In this case, here we need to focus on those in areas where we have the highest murder rates and bring them down. So on the homicide trends, here you can see the trends in the priority areas between 2023-24 and 2024-25 quarter one, you can see these are areas where we have the highest murder rates. And those are the areas that we have a huge focus on. And as a result, we have what we call the leap deployments, which is one of our biggest spending items, which I'll also cover at a later stage. But essentially, we had 30 leap areas last year. After we've had discussion with the City of Cape Town, Premier and Minister, it was decided that we're going to reduce the number of leap areas so that we can be more focused and more effective in those areas. So we've taken the areas, I'll just go to the next slide. We've taken the areas with the highest murder rates, and those are Kailicha, Harare, Mitchell's-Plain, Gugulethu, Nyanga, Mfuleni, and I can't see the other one. Yeah, in Mfuleni. So we've taken those areas and we say those are the areas that we will be covering, but we've included Atlantis. The reason for Atlantis is because we've managed to bring down Atlantis's murder rate significantly. And the intention is to see whether we can bring it down as close to zero as possible. So making sure that we use Atlantis as an area that we now put in all our efforts to bring it down and get that under control and then go to the next one and the next one. So we've reduced the number of neighborhood watches. Clairefontaine was removed from the list. We brought it down from 13 to 9, then we removed Clairefontaine. And then we also have a roving reaction unit, which go to the different units depending on where there's flare-ups, and they'll go to the different areas. So our plan of action. So what we have looked at is to look at addressing crime holistically. In the middle of that specific graphic, you'll see we first want to look at how do we prevent crime. If you can't prevent it, how do you protect and detect crime in our communities? And then we need to be able to respond and enforce if we cannot protect, and then we need to recover, and then we need to review and strengthen. So we're looking at the process as to how do we address safety as a whole. And I have indicated that when I introduce myself, that I'm actually from the Department of the Premier, where I'm in the IT space. And that's the model that we use for cybersecurity. You need to prevent, you need to protect, you need to respond, and you need to recover, and then you need to review, and then strengthen your controls in a comeback. And we found that it's typically applicable in the physical space, while cyberspace in the physical environment. So our first focus is impactful violence prevention programs. There we focus on the individual and the violence prevention programs, looking at that upstream programs, the school sports programs, communications programs to our citizens, working with Department of DSD and all of the entities to make sure that we focus on impactful violence prevention. The second part is focusing on the communities, making sure that the communities are empowered. So we say that we need to see of the responsibility to communities and municipalities. It cannot be SAP's responsibility to secure each and every community and every street corner. We all know it's not practically possible for SAPs to be on every street corner and address each and every crime. It's physically not possible, financially not possible. And we need to make sure that we now have a targeted shift towards our communities and our municipalities. So we need to empower our neighborhood watchers as force multipliers and first responders, understanding that we have 15,000 neighborhood watch members in our accredited neighborhood watch system at the moment, and also empowering the municipalities. And I've spoken about what we're trying to do in the municipalities in terms of maturing the law enforcement capacity within municipalities. And then also coordinate and standardized initiatives across districts. You'll find that in the West Coast, they'll have excellent initiatives that's worked, but it's not being replicated in Bito or Garden Route or any of the other districts. And the idea is to look at what are those initiatives where they've really excelled in, and then just replicate, making sure that we have those service delivery excellence replicated in different areas. And then also introducing innovative ICTs. How do we use ICTs to improve the ability to really detect crime? How do we use ICTs to respond to crime in our areas? The third Pentagon, as I can call, as you call it, is evidence-based policing and responsive law enforcement. They want to strengthen the capabilities of our law enforcement entities, both with LEAP and SAPS. And members, I must commend Minister for really striking up very early a very good relationship with SAPS, not only national, but also with General Patakile locally. And the initial stance was very apprehensive, but as soon as we had discussion with General Patakile and his team, and he understood Minister's perspective and where she's coming from, and that she doesn't want to go into an antagonistic relationship with him, he really opened up and immediately invited us to do a presentation at the big conference that they're having next week with all the station commanders. Minister and I were invited. I do not know whether the Minister will be able to attend because she has to be at the PCF at Beaufort. But he also invited us to join them and work with them on how we can get ICTs into the space. So immediately he took up that option. And when we spoke to them saying that our evaluation is going to be on the victim rooms that they have at their facilities, and we find that there's not a properly equipped victim room at the police station. The intention is not for us to have a go at the station commander. The intention for us is to say, ask the station commander why this is no victim room. If there's no budget for it, then our report should be that station wasn't given the funding to have a victim room. So that it's not a matter of us blaming, as the Minister said in the opening remarks, it's not a blame game. We do not want to blame, want to work with him. So it's about strengthening the capacity and also entrenching the evidence-based policing that we have. So we're working with the Hans Seidel Foundation, with the city, the SAPS and the Western Cape government. We sit together and we look at the stats, and we then look at how we're going to do hotspot policing. And I have a slide on the hotspot policing also that I'll cover. And then alignment of strategies. That's important because we have different strategies and different ways of doing things within SAPS, and the City of Cape Town, Western Cape government does not have law enforcement capacity. So, but in terms of how they operationalize the officials and officers, and that we need to align and understand how we're going to deal with that. And that was going to be part of the whole MOU that Minister has spoken about. So we'll be covering that in the MOU, and we've already had significant engagements on that. The fifth one is the recovery and response. And there we want to focus on the recovery programs for victims of violent crimes, but we also said, and perpetrators. We're focusing on the victims, and a lot of focus on the victims, which is the right thing to do. But the perpetrators, that's the leaking tap that we need to address. Because if you don't close that leaking tap, which is the perpetrators, you'll continually have violence. So the perpetrator will move from one victim to another victim. So it's about closing that tap, or fixing that leaking tap, which is the perpetrators. And we want to have programs around that. But we also want to have programs pertaining to a pathway out of gangsterism. So just to give you an example, one of our researchers went to Delft and spoke to one of the gangsters and said, but why do you stay within this gangster ecosystem? Why do you not get out of it? And the question was, so what do I do to get out? What's the alternative? Because that's a means of being economically active. That's a means of revenue. What's the alternative? We do not have the answers yet, but we need to explore what will be the alternatives for them and how do we deal with those. And then lastly, it's our results. So the recovery programs, as I said, focus on the victims and the perpetrators, but also these parolees that's being released. We need to focus on them. And we've had engagement with the correctional services already, especially the high-risk parolees that get released into the communities. How do we deal with them and how do we manage that? And then lastly, it's a results-driven strategic coordination and partnerships. And that's where our oversight role comes in, where we make sure, where we need to establish strong partnerships across the different spheres of government. We need to have proper oversight over SAPS, but in this case, it's oversight for improvement of service, not oversight for, as ministers also indicated, for trivialism or political science. It's about how do we provide oversight that adds value, and that's a key thing. We want to add value, and I think General Patakile understood that our efforts and our oversight efforts will be to add value. We do not want to issue a report and then we want to monitor next year to see whether it was implemented and say SAPS did not implement 3 of our 4 recommendations and issue another report. That's just creating work without adding value. We want to focus on the value added recommendations and work with SAPS to implement those. And obviously our own employee capacitation, one of the key things that we need to capacitate within our department is having a strong central safety coordination team. At this stage, we do not have that strong central safety coordination team. Safety is happening, initiatives are happening in education, health, cultural affairs and sport, in mobility. All departments are doing have some initiatives towards safety, but it's not being properly coordinated. And that's where we will play a strong role, and our minister will be the lead in reporting that to our provincial cabinet on a monthly basis, and then also having a manco where they can look at the results that we put in front of them, and then also see how we can take that forward. I think this is perhaps the key slide, and this is a slide which Minister spoke about that we've discussed yesterday in terms of what we're doing. So Minister had to provide 5 priorities, priorities to our previous office, and these are the priorities that were put forward. Firstly, creating it should be in the slide, Dixon. Okay, creating a safety culture amongst citizens. Here we're looking at interactive billboards and the number of where we reflect the number of homicide-free days. I'm sure many of you have been to building sites which is 5 days since the last injury on site. And that is what we want to put forward. We want to put forward a positive message. Sometimes it will be 1 day, 2 days, but we will also show the record that the record is 5 days. Can we do better? So the idea is to also change the hearts and minds of, to speak to the hearts and minds of those criminals, so that they can think twice before they commit the violent crimes and the murders. We also want to create safety awareness amongst the 25 to 35 years of age young men. And the reason why we say 25 to 35 years, in our stats, our homicide stats, which the minister referred to, the bulk of our violent crime victims, homicide victims, are youth between the age of 25 and 35. They're either the victims or they're the perpetrators. And we need to focus on that area. Then we have the positive role models. It's a program that we want to focus. We want to focus on leaders in those communities. And many of us come from these communities, and we need to plow back and we need to work in those communities. So we want to have a strong plowback program, but also focusing on community leaders. People are working in those communities, working hard to change the culture in that community. And also look at prominent sports personalities or radio and media personalities to start speaking to our people in our communities, and especially give hope to the youngsters. And I think that's important. We need to give hope to our youngsters. If they don't see any hope and they only see the gangsters flourishing, then they'll think that's the only way to go. Strengthen community-based safety. I've spoken about this. Here we want to increase the number of neighborhood watches. We want to strengthen our municipal law enforcement capacity. We need to have micro discussions with neighborhood watches and CPFs and have discussions at the micro level within those communities. Peace officer and lead trained officers to boost the neighborhood watch capacity. So even within our department, yesterday in our discussion, somebody asked me to explain this. Normally I have peace officers and lead trained officers, and they're supported by neighborhood watches, but we're flipping it around. And the reason for this is, when your leap officer is trained and he works either in the city or he's a municipal leap officer, a law enforcement officer in the rural municipality, once they're done with your 2-year stint, they're out of work. So the idea is, because then they're not employed by that municipality anymore. So the idea is that we want to look at how do we extend that specific that skilled person's term, by now saying you're not working for the municipality anymore, but we will assign you to a neighborhood watch or community policing forum, and you then become the eyes and feet on the ground during the day when the neighborhood watch members are at work. And we have that controlled environment where they do the patrols. There were some concerns that there might be some conflict and there might be some challenges that the existing neighborhood watches might have a problem with that. And I said, yes, there will be issues because we're going to have pay a stipend to these new people that we, or the experienced people that we're bringing in. But it's a discussion that we need to have, because it is something that can work where we have skilled people in the communities who can then be the first responder at that to hopefully be able to diffuse the situation before it escalates to murder. There's a citizen safety app that we want to focus on, and we've had initial discussions. The city also developed an app, and we'd like to have a discussion with them. And how do we use that? There's a rural rapid response unit, which is our farm watch. And discussions yesterday, the comment was made that the farm watch needs different support than what they require, that we require in a neighborhood watch. In a neighborhood watch, they require reflective gear. In a farm watch, they need camouflage gear. So it's understanding the different dynamics in what our community structures require and work with them so that we can have those structures properly capacitated. And then also we need to support the community safety forum functionality. Under priority 3, there we focus on the LEAP program, strengthening that LEAP program, and you'll see the green ones are the new ones. So when you look at this table, you see the green the green font depicts the new things that we've put in there. So they were looking at the central command center for the province, bringing all the different law enforcement entities under one command center. And that is in progress at the moment. And then also, as I've indicated earlier about the radio communication systems in the rural areas, that's something that we're working with the different municipalities to have that. We will be using the Department of Agriculture's HIMARS. They've got the AgriNet, and they've got HIMARS, 49 of them across the province, and we'll be using those HIMARS for radio communications. And members, one thing that we've learned, especially in the fire in Nyasa a few years ago, when a disaster hits, your communication infrastructure is the most important to protect. It doesn't matter whether you have the best firefighting machinery. If your communication tools do not work, you don't know how to, or your infrastructure is not working, you won't be able to know what people to rescue where because communication is not working. So that to us is key, getting the communications up. The priority 4 is the victim and perpetrator recovery program, and that's, I've spoken about that. The perpetrator rehabilitation program, the high-risk below risk pathway out of gangsterism. And members, I must honestly say the pathway out of gangsterism is something we know we need to do, but it's something that we still need to have some deep discussions with the relevant stakeholders, with our stakeholders in provincial government and outside, in terms of how do you do it. It is a challenge, but if we do not provide alternatives, then there'll only be one option for those people that's caught up in gangsterism. Develop the capacity to facilitate conflict and mediation of and victim offenders. So within our communities, we need to develop that specific capacity, and then victim-friendly facilities at hotspots and police stations. And the last one, priority 5, the top bullet is devolution of powers. I don't need to say anything more to any of the members on that one. 12% allocation of resources based on census results. Minister has also spoken to that, and especially establishing a weapon destruction unit within the Western Cape. That's something that we will be pushing and that we will be working on. And then the area-based anti-gang strategy. You cannot have a gang strategy, overarching gang strategy that says one size fits all. When we had discussions with the SAPS team and the anti-gang unit, they've indicated that that in the colored areas, your gangs are established for 25 to 30 years, coming from, Manberg gangs, Mitchellspring. In the African townships, it's the period is 3 to 5 years. The difference also is in the colored areas, they'll be named. In the African areas, they're not named. There's no name. You don't have name gangs in the African areas. And they also operate differently. So there's quite a lot of work that's happening. So we're working with SAPS, the NPA, the city on an anti-gang strategy. So, and it's being addressed at the prof joints. which is Provincial, is a structure that's headed by SAPS. And then also we have the city and all the different law enforcement entities attending that. Then we have the enhancing SAPS technology capacity. So in a recent discussion that we had with SAPS and the city, they did indicate the willingness or the desire to have printouts of the most wanted criminals in an area that the police officers should carry with them in the van. Now, I come from Mitchell's Plain. And I know what the gangster was saying. Nah, my bro, that's not me. he'll just deny that. So, and the fact that they still want printouts. We have technology these days that can do facial recognition. And there's no real technology within the vans of the police of SAPS. And that is one of the things that we'll also be working with SAPS. How do we do that? SAPS, the tracking devices can be disabled at the moment, but the SWIFT commander does not have a view as to where all his vehicles are. So he cannot track. And that's basic technology. I'm sure most of us can track where our daughters are on our apps. We don't worry about our boys. Where our daughters are with the cars during the day or at night. It's basic technology. But SAPS is not using that basic technology to ensure that the officers are actually within the boundaries of the area that they need to patrol, or they've exited that. And there's no system that gives them an early warning or a warning to say vehicle X is now moved beyond the area that they need to be. So those are the things that we need to work with SAPS. City was quick to offer their technology, but we'll have a discussion on that because we also have that same technology within the department of within the province with mobility and the traffic officers, where they have these services and we own that technology. And then lastly, Minister spoke about SAPS morale and then also focusing on the SAPS staff living conditions. So when you look at the ministerial priorities, we try to focus on each one of the areas that we have in terms of our focus areas, but then also making sure that the ministerial priorities focus on the right things and come in with new areas and new focus areas, because we need to do something differently. The evidence-based policing, I've spoken about this briefly, but it's been launched at 4 stations, Delft, Kalicha, Nyanga, Gulguletu. And we use the data that we have on the murder rates and also when those murders occur. And we have patrols on an hourly basis based on what is the time when we have the most murders. So we have 2 hotspots and 2 control areas were identified over the 4 areas. And the idea is to do visible policing where people can see the police is patrolling. The challenge that we have with SAPS not being able to see where the vehicles are is that Philippi East is one of our areas. So Philippi East fell off the list, but we insisted that Philippi East must get back onto the list. And to those of you who don't know Philippi East, it's a huge area. But the hotspot is not on the main road, it's deeper into Philippi East, it's off the main road. But when you see the SAPS patrolling routes, it's up and down the main road. So it's not going to the hotspot areas. And that defeats the purpose of hotspot policing. So the idea is that we need to look at how do we bring technology in, how do we get SAPS, the officers also to understand why there's hotspot policing and why it needs to be every hour, because the stats and the data indicates that we need to be at a specific point at a specific time, because that's the most likely time for crime to happen. So that program is in place from April 24 to September, and we'll be relooking the results now in September. And then the intergovernmental MOU. So this is the MOU that Minister spoke about, and I don't need to cover that again. Minister spoke about the initial engagement. We had 2 MOU sessions. The third has just been set up this morning, I see. And we'll have an agreement, which is the MOU, and we'll have a terms of reference because there'll be 2 or 3 structures, and then be an annual operation plan. So the MOU will be high level, and the annual operation plan will determine what we'll be embarking on for that specific year. And just lastly, before I go and before I pause, Chairperson, is the characteristics of our approach to safety. So firstly, it's to develop the safety plan 2.1 or 2.0. We have a safety plan that's a working document since 2019. with the knowledge and experience that we've gained since 2019, we now need to strengthen that. Safety to be addressed with data and a systems thinking mindset using an innovative model. So we're looking at the full crime and safety value stream from start to end and making sure that we address that. And we must acknowledge there's been an over-reliance on law enforcement, and it's not yielding the desired results. Just going in, kicking down doors has not worked. So we need to find a different approach to it. The responsibility to safety must be shared, and I think I've covered that, so that we can enable community-based safety. Of course, it starts at home. It starts in the home. And as I said, I come from Mitchells Plain. I have family and relatives all over Mitchells Plain, and I know who the colored moms, how the colored moms protect the criminal youngsters in those communities. They'll go out and say, that can't be my son. He'll never do that because he's an angel when he's in the house, but when he goes outside, he turns to red with two horns. And then strength and effectiveness of collaboration partners with SAPS, and that we've covered now. We'll have that. I said we'll have an explicit focus on the recovery phase of victims of violent crimes and also the perpetrators, more intelligent and effective use of data and AI. We'll leverage innovation and technology to improve responsiveness. At our meeting in Prince Albert, with the discussion with the municipalities, we added a technology stream, and I committed that even when I leave POX and in acting position, and when I leave that department, going back to my previous role, I'll still be involved in that process where we be implementing technology within the municipalities and then also within SAPS. Alignment of strategies that we've covered, that's part of the MAU, and focus on the impact or citizen value. And the first objective is to shift that murder trend line downwards consistently, Chairperson, and that's key. If we can get it down consistently, even if it's dropping by 1% at a time, it's going down in the right direction. Chair, I'll pause here because after this, I'll deal with the legislative mandates and the APP discussion. But I'd like us to pause here for questions, because otherwise we'll be lost.
Colleagues, let me just get an indication. Do members clearly, I think the hands going up answered my question. So let's pause here and ask some questions. I see member Van Minen. I see member. Let's do it from this side. Member Van Minen, member Philander, member Kassim. In fact, it looks like everyone has questions. So member Van Minen.
Thank you very much. Just before I commence, I just want to request that it's unfortunate we only got this report yesterday evening. We're late yesterday afternoon. It's a lot of very dense information. And I mean, thank you very much for taking us through it. But I think once one's able to sit down and digest it, there probably will be other questions. Okay, so I've got a number of questions that are relatively specific, but I just want to cover. You talked about the issue of increasing policing. Would that include the issue of detectives? Because obviously at the end of the day, detectives are also extremely important, and I do know that we're very undercapacitated when it comes to detectives. You touched on extortion. Is there, I mean, one judges by the media, so, you know, I don't know how accurate that is. Are you seeing a spike in crimes such as kidnapping? If so, is there any particular attention being paid to that? I know certainly in Gauteng that's becoming an issue, and it seems to be linked to extortion. I think cybercrime is a really interesting issue. The whole issue of technology is something else one can unpack at a future stage, because I'd imagine a lot of the issue there is going to be financial. But when it comes to cybercrime, I don't want to be too specific, but a lot of the shortcomings appear to be things like jurisdiction. People sit on the internet and they have a cybercrime, essentially, let's call it a cybercrime event. They go down to their local station, and the local station, with the greatest will in the world, hasn't the slightest idea how to actually deal with it. Because where did the crime happen? Did a crime happen? How did the crime happen? How is jurisdiction established there? And then in terms of the homicide reduction, you've made a very good case as to hotspot patrolling and evidence base and all of that. But the issue of domestic violence, typical traditional policing is not going to stop domestic violence because you're not patrolling inside people's homes. And are you seeing scope to potentially reduce murders coming out of domestic violence as well. It's a horrible term, domestic violence, because frankly, it's just murder. What is the department able to potentially do in that regard? Thanks.
Colleagues, I'm going to do it in threes to also give an opportunity for the department to keep track of our questions. So I'm going to break it up into sections of three. Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the presentation, I'm not going to repeat the sentiments as expressed by Member Van Minnen. Unfortunately, the pages are not marked, so please bear with me in that regard as well. The HOD did make mention of collaboration between the different spheres of government, also the various stakeholders. My question would just be in terms of interdepartmental collaboration. Where is this department taking that approach? And the reason I'm asking is that one of the slides also made mention of the high school dropout rates, the lack of recreational and skills development activities for youth, as well as substance abuse. Now I'm putting my social development hat on when I ask between the departments, this specific department, the Department of Social Development, the Department of Education, and one can include the Department of Health as well. Is there any anticipated collaboration between the departments to address those issues as mentioned? My second question, Chair, in terms of funding and resource support, there was also a slide on communities that are organizing themselves. What is the approach in the new financial year to make sure that the necessary resources do reach those community organizations and individuals that are organizing themselves and actually stepping up to the plate to do something about crime in their various communities? And then my last question, Chairperson, based on the planned LEAP deployment for the 2024-2025 year, the HOD made mention of the crime-invested areas and how crime is now circling out to the outer areas of the metro. I did not see the program deployment speak to those outside areas of the metro, especially the LEAP program or any other initiatives as seen fit to curb those crime in those areas before it completely spirals out of control, because we know now it's not just in the metro, it is spiraling out to the outer towns as well. And as the HOD mentioned, in terms of maturing the law enforcement capacities in those municipalities, what is the department's approach to assist in that regard to those municipalities? Thank you, Chair.
Member Kasim, and then we're going to give an opportunity for questions. Then we'll go to the next section. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got 3 points that I want to touch on specifically. I want to start off with the police oversight and community safety priorities. I've seen the priorities that you have here, but I don't see anything with regards to drug dens in our gang-infested communities. I know that I've asked this question several times in the previous term, and I still didn't get a response as to what is this province doing, or the department rather, about shutting down drug dens, specifically in areas like Mitchell's Plain, Khayelitsha and Langa, among others. Do you have an indication, or can you give me that indication or your plan as to how many drug houses have you identified in the Western Cape, especially in the gang-infested communities? How many have been shut so far since 2019? And then what is your plan going forward with regards to that? Is there a plan of action for the new term to tackle drug dens in those gang-infested communities? And then also farming areas, we spoke about law enforcement. We know that there's sometimes a shortage of vans, not only with law enforcement, but SAPs as well. What is your plan going forward to look at the farming areas? If we look at Philippi horticultural area, for example, there's over 20 informal settlements there. I've mentioned it before, women are raped during the night, they get attacked, there's no place of safety to run to because there's not even mobile police stations in the area. Do you have a plan of action to place more law enforcement in those areas? And then also on the issue of law enforcement, I've noticed that in a specific street in Stramfontein, there's about 5 4 to 5 vans stationed at a specific house on a daily basis, specifically at night. It's parked off in that road. So I just wanted to get an indication or an idea, why are those vans parked there, knowing that there's a shortage of vans, specifically in the Mitchells Plain area and those drug infested communities. I can give the street's name, it's Beagle Way. I'm not sure if it's a law enforcement or person living there, but it's also creating a blockage in the same street. The cars can't come in because it's parked off on that area. And then the last question is with regards to extortion. What is your plan going ahead for the new term to tackle extortions, especially in our poorer communities? Because a lot of businesses are shutting down due to fear. Thank you.
Over to the department and the minister.
We have to focus on increasing detectives because the caseload, and I think it's been noted earlier, recently, that the caseload per detective is just way too high. It's physically impossible for the detectives to cover the full caseload. So yes, that's an area that we will be focusing on. So the issue of kidnapping and whether it's linked to extortion. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not linked to extortion. When we speak about extortion, then we're talking about we have a business that needs to operate, and or that's operating. And take, for example, the lady in Kalitsa. The lady has a hair salon, but she has to pay 2 protectors on a monthly basis. So sometimes it can be linked, but most of the times the kidnapping is not necessarily linked to extortion. Extortion is where pay me for security. The kidnapping is often for ransom. So we need to pay for ransom. The issue of cybercrime. So when we do community police oversight and community safety, and police oversight is part of it, but the focus is on crime, and often people, they report cybercrime to us, which is not necessarily in our scope of work, but we can ask the police to have a look at that. Granted that the police does not necessarily, at the police stations, they do not necessarily have the readily available skills to tackle cybercrime. And there's a specialized unit that needs to be with it. So when that is the case, it has to be reported to SAPS, and they need to report it to the specialist unit, or if it comes to our attention, we'll also report it to the specialist unit. But SAPS local stations, they do not have the capacity to do the cybercrime. And one of the things that we've picked up even in the training when we did the oversight is that they're not trained in digital skills or in digital technology, so they won't have that specific skills. The hotspots, it's difficult to police domestic violence. As you said, it happens in the home. How do you deal with that? And the programs that I try to put and that we said that we're going to focus on is to address the perpetrators. How do we deal with the perpetrators of domestic violence? How to make sure that they don't go and repeat the acts of violence? But there's nothing that we can do at this moment when it comes into the house. It's about making sure there's safe spaces for the victims. And member Kasim has also raised a question on the issue of victims, making sure that there's safe spaces for them, and making sure that there's victim rooms at the police stations to adequately address that. But at this stage, our programs will be on working with the perpetrators, and that's why we said we'll have a strong focus on perpetrators in trying to address the domestic violence. And as I've indicated, the perpetrators, they're the leaking taps, and we're focusing on the domestic or the victims, which is equally important. But we need to stop that rot of people just committing domestic violence. Member Philander, the interdepartmental collaboration. We've just started our 5-year strategic plan, and we're now developing a new provincial strategic plan. And we have an interdepartmental and even cross-department, cross-sphere strategy that we're busy developing at the moment. So each department needed to indicate what they will be doing towards violence prevention and safety. And then we also have a session that we've had in, I think, early July, and we have another session early September, we will be bringing SAPs on board also, and the city. We will looking at what are the different initiatives that we'll be embarking on so that we can have synergies in our efforts to fight crime. So yes, if there's a huge collaboration effort coming along, and also the MOU that Minister has spoken about, the MOU speaking about aligning our strategies. So I know that you've spoken about, yes, we've got the MOU, but interdepartmental, I have indicated that we started with sports and culture so that we can get school sports up and running. So pretty soon we'll have the Wednesday afternoon schools program. We've had discussions with a group of teachers and principals at Mitchell's Plain who want to bring back the Mr. Price sports competition, or soccer competition, because those youngsters took pride in belonging to that or playing in that league. I did say to them, we cannot just have it in Mitchell's Plain. If we have it in Mitchell's Plain, it needs to be all over the province, because otherwise, why would we single out Mitchell's Plain or in all the hotspots? So yes, that process is underway. The funding and support, it's critical. We do provide funding and support for neighborhood watches based on business cases that they submit. And if they do submit a business case, we will look at the business case and we will fund it accordingly. I think to a maximum of 10,000, but that's apart from the kit that we provide. So that the reflective way, the lights at night that they can use. So we provide them with different kits, and there's a toolkit that we do supply them with when they start off, and we also do the accreditation. Member Kasim, the nothing pertaining to the drug dens. I've mentioned substance abuse in the presentation, but yes, we've not had any, we did not put forward a specific program on drug dens, and that is what we're working with the police, because the SAPs need to have that specific focus. I've tried to put focus on what we will be doing, and SAP strategy will be focusing on the drug dens. They do have the list of the numbers of all the drug dens, and if asked for that figures, but I will provide that to you. But all the drug dens, our concern is that SAPs, I'm a SAPS official, and I be informed that you need to make 20 drug arrests for the day. So what I do, I go to the drug den that I know, and then I wait for those youngsters to come after they've purchased the drugs and do the drug arrests. And we ask them that they need to look at closing down the drug dens rather than looking at the number of arrests. The number of arrests is not necessarily a sign of success. It means that more people are using drugs, or the drug dens are successful. They need to try and shut down the drug dens so that they have less arrests on drug arrests because of the success of closing it. So it's a fine line. They also need to look at how they look at the performance indicators, and that's something that we're engaging with. So that's part of our oversight function, making them understand that your indicator, you're measuring the wrong thing. You need to look at, if you put an indicator of you've closed down 20 drug dens, then that's a successful indicator, but not how many arrests you've made. So I will provide you with that figures. Then the farming areas. When we talk about farming areas, we talk about outside of the metro, farm watches. Because Philippi falls under the city of Cape Town, so it's a metro. We see it as a metro. We do not necessarily see that as a farming area. We will have a farm watch, but I do take your point that we need to have a plan of action for the Philippi area, and you've highlighted that now. So we'll go back. But it's not only the Philippi area. Then we need to look at other rural type areas within the city. Yeah, sorry. Correct. And the key focus, as I said, the key focus for us will be the whole issue of the safe spaces for our victims. Because where do they run to? They live in a sack, and if they run out there, they run to the sack next door or somewhere else. They often do not have places. So we're going to have a specific focus on the safe spaces for those citizens, and then also identifying it where it should be. Okay, the issue of the Vans Park, that's very specific. I said I'm from Mitchell's Plain. I lived in Stramutain, and I know where Beagle Road is, but we'll follow that up. So I won't be able to give you a response on that one. And the extortion and the anti-gang, those two go hand in hand. And we are working on a strategy with SAPS, with the INPE and the city to have a plan in place for extortion. But it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult. And I know we tend to point fingers at SAPS the whole time. But the problem is not just only SAPS. SAPS doesn't create the problem. SAPS need to respond and enforce. And that's the approach that we want to follow. How do we strengthen SAPS' hand? Either the city or the Western Cape government through the collaboration between the different partners within the Western Cape government and the NPS are there. How do we strengthen SAPS' hand so that SAPS, the whole responsibility of extortion does not just land with SAPS. We need to look at how do we work with them. And Chair, we have so many resources within government and outside of government that's ready for us, but it's about coordinating it. And Member Philander, the point that you made about collaboration, this department with our new minister will be taking a very strong role in coordinating all these efforts within the provincial government and outside of the provincial government and the other spheres of government, so that we can be more impactful, because we need to focus on those areas that we know are the problems. It's no use saying we're going to have a one-size-fits-all approach, whilst the one size does not fit a specific community. So yes, we will be pushing very hard to have that centralized control, and also instruct departments to give us a plan. So previously we were reluctant and we were dependent on departments to tell us what they're going to do. And this time around, we will be instructing them and say, you need to tell us what you're going to do in this area so that we can have a plan in place, and not leave it to the department to decide that we want to, we do not want to. It's not an option. This is one of our province's main priorities. Premier also always speak about safety and jobs. It's one of our main priorities, so we need to give priority attention to it. Thanks.
Anyone else who wants to add? Minister?
Just want to add to we work very close with DSD, with their gender-based violence ambassadors. But the ambassadors is more to support the victims or the survivors. It's not preventative. So I think maybe the Minister Lund and I have to discuss that, and if you can pursue it from your side as well. You know, that we have more preventative program. I'm going to say something very controversial. You know, we do have this gender-based violence programs for years, and it just wasn't. So I myself are not sure, but we must do something very different, and that's what I'm thinking about, and that's what we want to do. And then I just want to say, when the Premier appointed me in this position, he said to me that we must work together with all the departments. You know, it's no use say there must be more police officers, but our communities are not well. You know, we need social workers. That's the one thing that is very important that we must look at. And that's something that the Premier wants us to do, and to coordinate all the different departments to have a safer Western Cape was all. Yeah.
A follow-up, direct follow-up. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just an outstanding response. But let me say thank you very much for the responses provided. I think it's very positive in the sense that all those strings are coming together to ultimately get the solutions to the various challenges within our communities. Chair, there's just an outstanding response on question 3. In terms of the planned LEAP deployments of the outer areas, how and at what stage will they be included? And then just a follow-up perhaps on question 1. The strategic plans, those you made mention of the MOUs that have been signed and so on, but that also just relates and latches onto the inclusion of the outer municipalities in that strategic approach of yours. And then question 2's response made mention of should those business cases be provided, the necessary support in terms of resources also gets provided. Is there a specific time frame for those individuals or stakeholders in the community where they should apply with the department? I think that's also important. Thank you very much.
I see there's a follow-up, colleagues. I'll do the exact same for the section that hasn't had a chance to answer or ask questions. Follow-up as well, Member Kasim.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's very very small, just one question. Was just a follow up on the extortions. You didn't give much info on that. Also, I just want to check with you as the province in the last term and for this term as well. What is your plan of action? Like I said, in terms of that extortion and gang specifically, have you identified specific gangs? How many arrests has been made? Do you have any report or any details on stuff like that?
Yep. Over to the department and Minister.
I just want to mention now with the reason, Kailicha, that wasn't really extortion, but you know that heist, maybe it can be linked to extortion. So the police did really well. What happened is the Landros, the magistrate, did not, hoe sal ek sê, het nie die 48 uur wat, ja, Benita, I think you can be more with the legal end, but it didn't adhere to the 48 hours. So they were free arrested, and then they just left him. Two is still in hospital. The one's very so that wasn't the police work that was a problem. I just want to mention that, you know, that the police is not always at fault. Sometimes it's in die vervolgingsgesag that's got help. That's a problem. So I think we must look at that as well.
Yeah. Also, you.
Sorry, Chairperson. I just want to. I'm not specifically focusing on Kailich. I'm asking in general in terms of how many gangs has been.
Colleagues, I'm a little bit concerned that there's a dialogue developing here and we're not going to get to the other members. What I take from that is there's outstanding data in terms of your question with extortion. I do believe it's also something we'll be looking at as the committee as well. But Kasim, if I can give you a last word before I go to the next set of members. Did I summarize your concerns correctly?
To get the question across so that you can answer specifically to that.
So the extortion, we need a more comprehensive data. I'll give you a last thought and then we need to move to the next set of members.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, as indicated, this is an exploratory meeting, as indicated by yourself. We have a complete anti-gang strategy, which we are more than welcome then to present at the specific to the committee, rather than going into trying to go into the specific details. But we have a strategy, and if the member will then, it will be Minister or the chairperson will agree to it and the committee, then we'll do a presentation on the anti-gang strategy at an appropriate time, and we'll bring the relevant stakeholders into it, and then we'll cover the anti-gang and extortion in that specific session.
Colleagues, then the next section here, Member Jacobs, you indicated earlier that you need to move, you need to leave a bit early. My apologies, I didn't mention that under the apologies, but I'm going to give you the first chance and then we'll continue with the rest of the members. You indicated you need to leave early, so over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad I'm part of this. I am the alternate member, but I'm glad I'm part of this because for me, being on the ground, I know what is happening, and sometimes people can turn, a report around, and we will have a different understanding from the report in terms of what's happening on the ground. So I just wanna add on to what was said with regards to shutting down the drug dens. Most of those houses belongs to the city of Cape Town. Why don't we start there? Why don't we start there? It's all city houses that those people are smuggling out. The other thing that I wanted to say is extortion. When we look at extortion, there's different angles of extortion. So when we say extortion specifically, when we're speaking to infrastructure. Now let's go back to 2005. Before 2005, there wasn't extortion. The reason why there wasn't extortion is because the 30% that was allocated for our local people was always included until there was a new government that took over. The 30% was cut out. So now you have extortion. So I just want to come in quickly there. What extortion? Sometimes you find that there is genuine contractors that comes for job opportunity. What does the contractors do? They then report that as extortion. Why? Because they already got a deposit. Now they can leave for that deposit without doing the work. So they will now report that as extortion. And there's many cases that I can refer to, especially the one that happened in Mitchell's Plain, where our contractors went to the contractor and he reported them as extortioners, but they only came for genuine work. What we need to do, we need to speak to the Department of Infrastructure, Bring the 30% back to the local people and you won't have extortion. Sometimes we're causing our own problems. We're causing our own problems. That's what I wanted to say with regards to extortion. And then I just want to go back to the school program. You know, we have all these gang elements and things happening at schools, but we don't have extramural activities happening at schools. When we look at our sporting facilities, we can now say that we want to bring in extra sporting facilities. But we had a brilliant program, Mr. Price. Then we had undisciplined members from a different organization coming in. They were the ones killing the Mr. Price program because they didn't want the Mr. Price program to continue. And I'm just making an example why we have certain things happening at our schools, because it was because of certain programs that was cut out. When we look at our guys who selling drugs and the guys who shooting gun, if we really go into it and really see who's these people, you'll find that some of them were business guys, some of them were entrepreneurs, but because there was no opportunity for them, where must they turn to? Why was Radio closed down? Radio was a brilliant thing, a program that was running in Mitchell's Plain, starting up small businesses, and the young entrepreneurs were flourishing. After 2005, Radio was cut out. So I'm just saying we were the ones that, not we, but the leading party were the ones that caused this problem. And that's why we're sitting where we're sitting today. So that is just my 5 cents that I want to put in. Thank you.
Right. And now my moment of truth is here, because I'm going to mispronounce your surname and you're going to have to help me with it. Remember, Nkwensu. Over to you. You'll help me during the break.
Let me welcome the President of the Department, as well as the MEC for Police Oversight and Community Safety, and also have opening remarks in respect to what she commits to do as a priority, as her priority. And of course, she indicated that she still need to integrate those priorities with what is she's going to sign from the Premier in this respect, what you call performance of agreement, whatever you call it, and also appreciate what appears also as a possible relations between all spheres. You know, in the past, one has observed what we describe as a beauty contest, an unnecessary beauty contest in respect to responding to the challenges we are facing. I think such things should be commended, including the relations with the South African police services. Though the statement you issued jointly with JP Smith was in a way disappointing, given the posture you are presenting today, you know, because the statement projected the police and the provincial commissioner in this instance from the negative note. You know, the meeting of the 8th. Now, but here are my issues. I listened, I looked at the report, the plans, and I agree with member London. Yes, it's unfortunate that we received this last night, you know, but one was able to look at it, but also listen to it. You look at, I looked at what could be described as a problem statement, right? An attempt to locate the challenges we're facing, the extortions, gangs, and so on. And we're able to argue some of these issues, and also driving factors, right? The sources of this problem. But when you go to police oversight and community safety priorities, right, you don't find a relationship which seeks to respond to the problems you described. Some of the members outlined those problems. You know, I do not think that interactive billboards, creative priority one serves as a preventative response in this. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think we all agree that some of the responses do not only reside with this portfolio or your portfolio, MEC. You know, for instance, create a safety culture among citizens. If you go to Philippi, for instance, in squatter camps, there's no access road. We're not talking about that, right? If you go to these squatter camps area and working class communities, there are potholes, right? And potholes contribute, you know, to smash and grab, contribute to robberies, even carjacking, you know. So an attempt must be made that priorities be revised in a manner that seeks to respond to the problem. Installing a billboard is not a big deal, but it's not addressing the problem in a preventative manner in this instance. You know, so I felt that I must highlight that particular point. You know, that there should be a review, particularly the priority 1 and 2 in this instance, right? You know, now, though of course, strengthening the capacity of neighborhood watches is one preventative response that should be commended. Now, but again, the report seeks to suggest that policing in the Western Cape has just been happening without evidence, or has not been evidence-based. And now there's going to be a new thing called evidence-based policing. Now, I don't think so. I would agree if you say we improve the crime gathering capacity of the South African Police Service in this instance. Because CIG, it used to be called CIG, was responsible, and that policing is done based on analysis done to say, listen, here are the trends and patterns, and therefore there should be concentration of visibly policing in this and that area. You know, so I don't want that to be accused of inventing new things, yet they are already existing systems. You're making a very good point of seeking to strengthen the effectiveness of cooperation. I forgot where I highlighted it somewhere. Now, one component as you seek to build relationships, correctional services, etc. But I don't think we should ignore. Let's talk about rebuilding relations and collaboration within the criminal justice system, so that you begin to include justice or the NPA in this instance. Because the issues there, for instance, the issue MEC you raised of the Khayelitsha cash and transit heist, it is as a result of, yes, technical, but it is because these departments do not link. You know, so we need to attend the issue of the NPA, where the police officials, for example, are made to arrest and send dogs to court, and when they get there, cases are struck off the road. We need to engage with the police as well on this particular question, because police officers are made, Chair, to arrest, to investigate, not investigate to arrest. In many instances, those are the fundamental basis for cases to be struck off the road or not prosecuted at court. So so this issue of strengthening effectiveness and relations need to go beyond correctional services, but also include justice. And as I said earlier, you're making a very good point, and I was not aware about this. But from your end, the angle you are advancing, that extortion and gangs, though these are two different things, I indeed have become an enterprise. And you're making a point that actually by being a member of a gang, you are getting a remuneration. But there's no response from the plan to attending to that particular question in this instance. So what is their response? I think the member next to me raised this point. It's good to describe the problem, but what we need, how to change the world. That's what we need, including the issue of extortion. And who are the forces involved in extortion activities? Who are the forces involved in extortion activities in this instance? Where we live, where we work. To what extent are state departments or organs or spheres of government involved? To what extent? I know, let me make an example. In 2015, I led a strike. I was working for the National Union of Mine Workers, an 8-week strike of a company called Gudu. And we at that time, they were busy refurbishing flats in Meningberg and other parts, building schools. We accused the company of employing gangs as their security and many other labor-related matters. Now, some years ago, the founding CEO, Rashid, was kidnapped and found after 100 days in Khayelitsha, unarmed. Who are the forces involved in these criminal enterprises? And some of us have described is that there is a nexus between the criminal network, business elements, certain elements from the criminal justice cluster, and some elements from departments, either municipalities, provincial, national, and organs of the state. So to what extent have you paid attention to that thesis in this instance? And the last point, and I'm happy that you are elevating the issue of the victim support facilities, the MSA. I'm doing this given the fact that the chair said this meeting is for what? To kick off, and that out of this meeting we have a sense of the plan, and we believe that this plan will be revised given the inputs we are making. I didn't want to just get to questions, but begin to problematize some of the issues. And some of the members make this point that you describe this issue, school dropouts, it's you identified that, a youth, etc. But in your priorities, they not talk about such matters. So if you were just need to pay attention to looking at the background you have given and what you have described as challenge and so on, and your priority, and ensure that there is a relationship, that will help us a great deal. And we commend that there's going to be, you're going to get monthly reports. There's going to be monthly reports. But also the issue of lip service is a very last point, final point. Lip officers. If for example, lip officers were deployed in Atlantis, and in Atlantis, they contributed reinforcing, and that the stability or the rate of crime or murders has declined. It remains unstrategic, I submit, to remove them to other areas. It's unstrategic because you ought to consolidate the work they've done, because you may take them to Harare and elsewhere, and the criminals will go back, because the criminals actually are advanced than us, than the state. And they follow trends and patterns of our deployment, of our thinking, of our intelligence. And that is why, by the way, Chair, I'm always concerned about public engagement on policing and safety matters, even announcing plans to address crime, yet criminals do not announce publicly their plans to commit a crime. We to catch them, we announce plans to catch them. They do not. So this is, for me, these are intelligent matters, which for me should not always be on camera, should not always be in the public domain, but systematic, but also know that we ourselves might possibly be entangled. That is why I would say vetting chair in this committee and even in the South African Police Service should be undertaken to ensure that none of us are entangled in criminal activities or are involved, because these elements are quite systematic and they are working very hard to ensure that they succeed on their criminal activity. As it has become, this country and this province in particular, I think for me is mutating towards becoming Colombia, if not Mexico. Thanks.
Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, mine will be mostly comments. And I think comments because for my sins, everything that has been covered thus far, one way or another, I've been exposed to some of that, and I'm going to relate to that. I want to start off where the minister made the example of the 48 hours that just happened. And what we also need to look into is that in the hundreds of community safety workshops that either province, is initiating in the different communities, the judiciary gets invited and they've never attended. And some of the matters that would normally come out, and what my colleague, Member Ngenso, have also alluded to, is that SAPS would do their work. They would apprehend and the criminal will be out on the street. And the community will blame SAPS for that. And in fact, it's a judiciary issue. And the judiciary is never there to explain what are the conditions for bail and why do they give bail so that the communities can understand. But then also I want to come back to the different ranks that has also been alluded to. That is a fight on the ground. Chairperson, there is a stakeholder that we need to get on board and involved, and that is SALGA at a national level. There's a structure, I think it's called the RTMC. I used to serve many years on that structure. And Chairperson, one of the things that is always a sticking point, you would get traffic, you would get police, you would get law enforcement, and in some stages you would actually even have the SANDF in the same meeting. And all of these guys have the same rank in the different categories. And one of the points there is that at municipal level, there are 1 year accredited courses that give you a certain rank. And in traffic and in police, the same rank takes 4 years. So those 3 to 4 years. So those guys undermine each other at the get-go. That you had a cheap course for 1 year, I had to go to school and sit on the desk for 4 years, so they do not respect each other from the word go. So even when they respond to whatever scene, if they're all there, it's a rank issue on who respond and who takes over the scene. And if we can get SALGA, and the metros are a big problem with that, the local municipalities, the Bs are more than willing to adapt. They would go with whatever verdict comes out of that a certain course will either be 2 years or 3 years, and the municipalities would fall in. The metros are a big stumbling block against SAPS and against traffic, national and provincial traffic and whatever. So if we can get uniformity, and SALGA is in a position to dictate that, the guys are willing, but I think we need to get SALGA national on board on that as well. And then, Chairperson, the elephant in the room is the buzzword devolution. And I think we as this committee, we are all affected by crime one way or another, regardless of where that powers reside. And I'm going to make an example. When I was serving on the NEC committee for safety, at one stage when Dan Plato was still the MEC for safety and etc. back then, whatever the term was, we accompanied Dan Plato to Overstrand, Zwelithle. We got there, it was at night. We got there, the police have locked themselves up and they were all asleep. And we struggled and eventually they opened up. I want to come to why I support devolution, because we experience certain things and there's nothing the MEC can do about it when things go wrong. Those cops there, it was a matter of, so what? to the MEC. You do not have the powers to deal with me because you caught me asleep and whatever. So the evolution would probably, you know, create a situation where immediate action can be taken at the level where it's occurring. Because now you have to escalate to national. It doesn't even get to national and nothing happens. So we as a committee need to agree that crime affects everyone and it needs to be nipped in the bud at the level where it occurs before waiting for escalation. Now, to come back, this is another question that probably the evolution can deal with this. The police, up until today, lock themselves up, whether it's for sleep or whether it's for protection, chairperson. Just last week, we got woken up, myself and my wife, got woken up by a family member from my wife's side, domestic violence. My wife took the car, took this lady to SEPS in Kwanokutula in Beto, took them there. It was locked. They struggled. Eventually, somebody opened up and spoke to them through the what's it called? The trolley. Through the trolley, and said to my wife, "There's no police van. Please take this lady home." How do you take somebody home as a community member where there's domestic violence? You need SEPS. Now, immediately, for me to jump out in my PJs because I serve on this committee is going to be pointless. It's going to be an embarrassing even to me. It's a matter of, again, and my question is, somebody is creating a climate of violence that is also affecting SEPS. And some stations are guarded by private security. Now, a climate has been created. Private security get jobs to do and to strive in what they're doing. We need to look into who is causing this climate. And I don't want to accuse here, but private security is cashing it all the way to the bank because there's a climate of fear, even amongst police. And we need to get to the intelligence of that in terms of, is that deliberate that we have security guards looking after police? It should be the other way around for the safety of our communities. And then, Chairperson, lastly, on the 5 priorities, on priority 4, I want to touch on the issue of mediation in communities, etc., etc. And once again, Chairperson, in the xenophobia of 2006-2007, in Beto, I was a ward councillor. This xenophobia affected the whole of South Africa. And for some reason, in my ward, it did not happen. My ward, in fact, in Beto became the safe haven. And that created problems from other wards. The criminals wanted to come and invade Ward 6 at the time. And I want to come to this mediation, which is a good thing. What happened in Beto is that in that ward, Kwanokutula, there's a religious fraternity. And they were the first respondents when that breakout happened in the other wards. They were the first respondents and they mediated immediately in that ward, and it did not happen. And our brothers and sisters from the other countries ran to that ward, and all the churches in Kwanokutula became the safe havens. The guys were sleeping in the churches, and they did not get attacked. And ever since, whenever xenophobia kicks up, that fraternity gets triggered. I want to come to also the issue of mediation. With the district safety initiative, there was an attempt, or it was on the list, that there will be training in all 5 districts in the province, identify possible mediators in each and every ward or constituency. They should get training, whether it's in intelligence or whether it's dealing with these criminals, etc., to ensure that whenever there's a vibe, they then get triggered. By the time SEPs arrive, the mediators are already on scene, and the situation do not escalate to a level where bullets have to fly, etc. And I think, and I would propose that the department must revisit and ensure that that initiative, gets going. Thank you, Chairperson.
Last person, Member Stevens. We'll start the other way around in the future so that we don't leave you at the end all the time. Okay.
Our ministry is responsible for fostering good relations between the police and the community. However, we are facing an alarming reality. Trust in our police force is at an all-time low across the Western Cape. Communities feel abandoned, and the escalating violence is a stark reminder that our current strategies are failing. The pressing question is, what is the new plan? It's evident that the previous approaches have not succeeded. And then I've got one question. The police, the priority structure, they removed Kraaifontein. On what grounds? Because I'm from Kraaifontein. And I know what's going on in Kraaifontein. And it's not that the crime is less. I was called out on Saturday by a mother that asked me to go to the local pub. I couldn't refuse. I got up. I went to the local pub because her daughter was there. Young girls, as from the age of 13 years old, was in the pub, the local pub in Kraaifontein, Scottsville, Kraaifontein. There were so many gangsters in that pub. There was girls as from the age of 13, 14, 15 years old that was dancing and drinking there. As of this lady's two daughters was also there, but she was too frightened to go in there herself to bring out her daughters out of that situation. I took my husband with and my daughter, of which my husband was also threatened by this one gangster. I believe he came out of jail about 2 or 3 months ago. He's like a big boss of some gang that's just on the other side of the road from where I'm staying. The young boys that was in that place, I think the youngest was around about 14 years old. And they are the new groomies. I believe they are the new ones, the new kids on the block that's been trained by these gangster bosses in Kraaifontein. Saturday night, early hours of Sunday morning, the local garage down Milton Road. There's a garage and there's a garage where they fix cars. All the cars that was on that parking, the residents that's staying upstairs and the cars of which this guy was still busy fixing, all these cars was damaged by this little gangsters. And the sad part is, when you do phone the police to come out, there's either no answering, because most of the time the people phone me to phone the police. There's no answering at all. Nobody's answering the phones. If you go there, they will tell you there's no police vans at the moment because they must service Wallisdean, Bloemfontein, the whole of Kraaifontein, and we know Scottsdene, Bloemfontein, Wallisdean, and Scottsville. It's like we call it a red zone, because even your local Ubers, they don't deliver after 6 o'clock because of the red zones. But still, we've been taken off the list here, the high risk list. And that is like sad for me, that staying in one of those red zone areas of Scottsville. And I mean, we've been fighting very long now to get a substation there in Scottsville. Because if you phone the police, it takes them about half an hour to an hour to get to Scottsville, to come over the bridge from the Kraaifontein side. And there is 3 sections in Scottsville. They call it Blommeland. It's where there's 3 gangs operating there. Then they call it the ghettos, of which there's a gang operating there. And then on my side, there's a gang operating there. So how many times on a Saturday, on a Sunday, especially times where people must go to church or come from church, these gangs are fighting, shooting over the field. And that's the field where we actually need a substation there. Then there's fighting and shooting. Sometimes you can't even go to church. People on those sides can't attend church because they need to come over that field. The train station is there. People must walk over that field to get to their houses. And I mean, that youngsters, the 2 girls was killed on that field not long ago, 2 matriculants. And the murder rate in that area is very bad. And I'm just now talking of one area in Cryphon. I'm not even talking about the Scottsdene section area where crime is like over every weekend. We buried youngsters there. If there's funerals in Cryfontein, and I mean there's a lot of funerals over the weekend, mostly youngsters that get killed over weekends in that area. So I don't know how they could take Cryfontein off that area. I mean, we buried a young girl last week, Saturday, that was also murdered in Cryfontein, coming from work. A mother came from work. She was shot. They said they killed innocent people, then they call it straight bullets. But now they're taking Cryfontein off. It's actually sad for me that it's from Cryfontein and sitting here. I mean, you can ask the Cryfontein police station how many times I phoned. I had the whole police force out at my house about 2 months ago, where they tried to kill a matriculant in front of my house by gang members. And then that same gangsters, they came to damage my house. So we had to stand up whole night. The police had to circle around my house whole night. I had to phone police out of other areas to come and spend time there with us to prevent these gangsters from damaging the houses. And I mean, if sometimes you phone the police or you give them information, but before they get to that house, that person already knows that that information is coming from you. I gave information to the police in the past, and then the gangsters came to me because somebody in the police station told them that Mrs. Stevens on the corner, she's the informant. She's the one that's phoning the police. She's the one that's telling the police where to go search the houses. I'm the one that's pointing out all the drug lords. And that's how bad it was. And that's not good. Yeah.
Right. Over to the minister and the department.
Just one point.
Okay, I'll allow it. Just keep in mind, I have to look at the time as well. But over to you.
No, thanks, Chair. MEC and your collective, given what you just presented, I forgot to raise this point as an attempt to ensure that there is coherence in the province. I would like to propose that a meeting is convened involving all municipalities in the province to discuss their respective safety plans, and action as they respond to the challenges that they are facing. And should that happen, it may help to ensure that your plans are coherent with your respective municipalities.
Over to the minister and the department.
I just want to say thank you. I note all the comments and the questions, and I want to ask Member Stevens, can you give me the name of the local pub? Is it the local pub in Scottsville?
Yes. It's only one. It's
The-
the 7-Eleven.
Oh, yes.
It's center. It's a small center.
Yeah.
It's a pub in the casino. There's a
Okay, I
casino
know.
that was
Yeah.
not house where the shooting was.
Yeah.
There's a pub also in the
the-
same area.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Thank
just 2 doors apart.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mostly Friday nights and Saturday
Yeah.
nights.
Okay. Thank you.
From a certain time, after 10,
Yeah.
straight to there with the youngsters.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Chairperson, I'll respond to Member Jacob's comments in his absence. So
Colleagues, just on that, my apologies for interrupting you. Just on that, Member Jacobs did indicate that he's leaving early. I did suggest to him that with Hansard, and if he needs assistance, I'll assist him to get the answers to that as well. But he understood the implications of him leaving is that he will lose, obviously not be here for the answer. Over to you.
thanks so much, Chair. No, you did indicate that Member Jacobs need to leave. So I thought for the record, let me just respond to those questions. So firstly, the drug dens that belong to the City of Cape Town, we agree, Chairperson, but that's going to be part of the collaboration agreement between City and SAPS, where we need to look at how do SAPS work with the city to identify those, and how do we then address closing down or taking back those houses that belong to the City of Cape Town. But that's a process between the two of them. The 30% LED, the local economic development percentage, that causes the extortion or the perceived extortion. That is something that we'll have to take up with the Department of Infrastructure. I think the mention was also made by Member Jacobs. And the extramural activities, the comment of Mr. Price was killed by, was stopped by some errant people from another organization. I know the history and the background of the Mr. Price. As I said, I had a detailed discussion with the founding members of the Mr. Price program. And when I reported back that we're going to start a new schools program, they were not too happy because it's more power issue also between the two bodies, between South or Western Cape and this Mr. Price program. But we will be part of this program to make sure that we find a middle ground that addresses both these two structures. And as I've indicated, we cannot just have a Mr. Price school program in Mitchell's Plain and forget about all the other areas where soccer is also a high priority for the youngsters. And especially in the rural areas. When we went to Prince Albert, that was one of the key things that they've mentioned. There's no recreational facilities for the youngsters or competitions. The Redo was closed down, Chairperson. I cannot comment more on the Redo. I know what the Redo was about and you know when it happened, but that was to give business advice to youngsters, young entrepreneurs. And what we have in the province, I think that is more something that we need to speak to our Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and I take it up with Joanne Johnson to see what is the replacement, because they do have programs and digital programs in place for youngsters to access the same information and data that they had and support that they had with the REDO program. Chairperson, the issue on the priorities, and the priorities do not respond to the challenges, and specifically priority one. So what we have in our plan is those interventions that within our department's control. When we present at a later stage the provincial strategic plan, then member, you'll be able to see everything coming together where the different departments have specific role play. I agree with you that the communications program won't necessarily address the root causes as you've identified. But we need to look at what is possible within our department and what we need to do with our Department of Social Development, Department of Education, as it was mentioned earlier about the dropout rates, Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, Department of Mobility. All of these departments have got a role to play. So I agree with you. It does not directly address what we've put there, but we're looking at what is our contribution towards that. And the reports that policing, so you also mentioned that you're hoping that our plans, that we'll change our plans, that there'll be opportunity for change. So I come from an environment where we have regular audits, and I'm referring back to the IT space. We have regular audits, you have the internal auditors, you have the standing committees, you have so many oversight bodies that provide oversight. And Chair, once we learn to utilize the advice that comes from the standing committees and the Auditor General and the audit committees, and then you start realizing that those entities that provide oversight and those people that serve on those committees, they provide valuable insights pertaining to what they know. And often we only know what we know within our department. So we do what we do because we know that's what we need. So we value the inputs of the standing committee chairperson, and we will internalize it and understand what are the things where we need to shift the dial and where do we need to change it. So the plan on the priorities, the priorities were submitted, but what lives underneath those priorities, those are the things, the space where we have opportunity to change. So we will take into account all recommendations, and we'll be accountable to this committee. And this is what government is all about. We implement. We have the oversight committee that redirects us a little bit and say, you're not hitting the right spot. But it's because oversight committee is active within the communities. So Chair, I just want to say that the reports that suggest that policing has not been done without evidence. Remember, it's not that it's not been done without evidence, but they've not drilled it down to a fine art of saying this is what the evidence presents, and then drilling down and saying we're now going to have a focused attempt on addressing crime in specific areas. So the hotspot area is looking at, we have Philippi East, we have a high homicide rate in Philippi East, but what parts of Philippi East provide that? So whereas the SAPS would have had people patrolling Philippi East, this detail now that we get from our health department, where they pick up the bodies, where the murders occurred, that type of detail has not been made available to SAPS in the past, which we are now making available to them so that they can actually see where it occurred. And because SAPS has not got that database up until the actual GPS coordinates, which we're now providing from the health perspective. So you're right, remember, it's not as if they did not have data before. It's just the granularity of the data that we now provide enables us to make more detailed assessments of where we need to be deployed. The need to address the issue of the NPA that needs to be included, I agree entirely, and we will take that on board. We will include the NPA in our discussions that we have with the members. The issue of extortion, where you've mentioned, remember, that it's good to describe a problem, but what is the response? But you've also mentioned that we cannot be communicating our strategies to the gangsters. And once again, coming back to the IT component that I'm working in, you'll never see our cyber security strategy on any website or on any platform. Even if the standing committee wants to meet with us, we come with hard copies, or we come with a presentation, not even hard copies, and we do the presentation in the room, and we allow the committee to ask questions without handing that over. Because it's about making sure that we keep our cards close to our chest, because the gangsters will never put their strategy online. But we go and put our, so the strategy is not made publicly available. And that's why I said I would like us to do a presentation to the committee on the strategy. And the issue of the vetting that you've mentioned, I think that was a comment to the chairperson and not necessarily to us, if I'm correct, remember. And the plan that the LEAP officers, yeah, if they've been successful, we said you should not be looking at communicating our strategies. Extortion, the plan to be revised. Yeah. So Chair, I think the members might be a bit, would want to have more information of extortion and gangsterism. So that is, from my perspective, I view that as a really definite discussion for a session that we need to have a presentation and the discussion and the sets. And even if we do have that discussion, we bring SAPS on board, we bring the anti-gang in, bring them into the room and have the discussion, because then you can also ask SAPS and the City of Cape Town what they can do. Because this committee does have the power to have to summon SAPS also to this committee. I just need to get to the other matters. Member Boyson. The judiciary never attends the hundreds of sessions. I think it links to the point that the judiciary is not part of our structure, of our plans and our structures. Admittedly, they did come to present an anti-gang strategy to us a few weeks ago, but it needs to be part of the mainstream strategy. It cannot be a strategy on their own. But you're right, we need to have them on board. But then when it comes to the point that you've mentioned in terms of the ranks, once again, I come from an IT environment. A person who's got a 3-year computer science degree and a person who comes in with a 6-month or 1 year coding, they're more or less at the same level in terms of ability, but there'll always be this superiority battle between them, a power struggles to battle in terms of who's the more superior, and we have that in this environment. So when I refer to the engagement in Prince Albert, we did have the City of Cape Town there, who's on board with this whole process. We did have Salga there, and we had 21 of the municipalities on board to take this process forward, knowing that we need to work together and have some consistency. So I can assure you that Salga is 100% on board and they're working with us on this matter. And you did say that the metros are the stumbling blocks, which in this case, the city is actually working with us. They want us to work with us, and they want to work with us. My apologies, I just need to, if I can just be excused. They want to work with us so that we can really address the issue of this disparity. And we also have the city providing training to these members, to the municipal. So we use a city's training facility. Apologies. My apologies, Chairperson. To these members. The issue of the xenophobia and the training the mediators, that's going to be a key focus because we want to have community safety plans with all the districts, or they have the safety plans for all the districts, and we want to standardize on the things that we need to put in those specific safety plans. As I said, there's pockets of excellence and we want to replicate that, but to us the mediator training is a key one. If your wife went to the SAPS office at 1 o'clock in the morning, in Kwanokotula, and it's strange that that one is closed because that's quite a big SAP station there next to the Tusang Center. But if they went there and they had a victim room and they had a person that they could call to assist, then the person would not have had to go home because he would have been a mediator that can provide that psychosocial support, and there would have been a victim room. And that's part of our oversight role. Not only POC's oversight role, but the committee's oversight role, that we need to identify these gaps. So as part of our report on that police station, we will say, but there's no victim support in, oh, it's closed because when do gender-based violence occur? Late at night, early morning, when the husband comes home or the boyfriend comes home and is drunk, and then it starts. So our SAPs need to be alert to that as to when the peak offers. Imagine Mitchell's Plain community health center being closed at 10 o'clock in the evening in Mitchell's Plain. They can't, because that's the peak time. That's when the people come in with the gun wounds and the stab wounds and whatever. So yes, we'll have to take that up, but it's part of our oversight role and making sure that we'll have a proper intervention on providing training to our members. The devolution of powers, once again, I'll leave that to our politician and to cover. Yeah. Okay, and then I've covered the one where they've locked up themselves to sleep, or your comment was made as who the private security are coining it. Yeah, I suppose before I came to this department, and Chair, I've been in the department for a bit. So that was my view also, because common sense tells you there need to be some economy around this. And it's something that needs to be explored. We do not have the response as yet, and I do not want to purport to have the response, but it's something that we will look into. It's not even the secondary market, it's a primary market that we need to look at. Because you need to create the demand in order to supply your services, and who's creating and how is that demand for that service being created. And then Member Stevens, the trust of the police is at an all-time low. And I know, and I've sometimes tried to put myself in the shoes of a police officer, those good police officers who's really working hard. And I think that is what our minister want to focus on, is to improve the efficiency, the effectiveness, the competence of our police, so that we can start trusting our police again, so that our communities can have trust in the police. And it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, and it's going to happen. We're going to have to do that one police station at a time, two at a time. We have 152 police stations in our province. So we need to look at how we're going to do that. And perhaps we need to look at how do we develop a maturity map for each of the police stations, taking into account what they need to have in place, and then also code them red, amber, green, purple, whether they're well performed or not performing, but also trying to incentivize them to improve. There is a QR code at police stations that you can scan to report, but very few people know about that QR code. I didn't know about it. General Patakili informed us last week that when you go to a police station, there's supposed to be a QR code that you can scan and report the service and the level of service that you're getting there. And the issue of Kraaifontein, we've based that on the number of homicides per area. And I understand that you've sketched a very grim picture of the scenario in Kraaifontein. But similarly, a person in Philippi East or in Nyanga can paint a similar picture. And we had to follow the stats at the stage, where it shows that the murder rate in Philippi East and other areas that we've identified are much higher than in Kraaifontein, and that's why we removed Kraaifontein. Not that we're not going to have any policing services there, but it's just for the purpose of consolidating our efforts, we needed to trim down and making sure that we have a concerted effort. And that's it. We still have the roving unit who can be dispatched to Kraaifontein as and when needed. But that is the challenge, that we have limited resources and we need to concentrate it into the specific areas. Chairperson. Thanks.
Minister, you want to add anything? Colleagues, I'm a bit concerned about time. So colleagues, if you want to do follow-ups, please let's keep it brief, the follow-ups. We also have the rest of the presentation to finish. Is it possible to wait until after the rest of the presentation, or is it something pertinent to what was raised now?
Yes, this emanates from the current presentation. The HOD is aware that there's
Over to you, member.
outstanding. Thank you.
Member Philander?
Sure, just to assist HOD, that was the question 3 in terms of the planned leave deployments for 2024-2025, the outer area inclusion in those plans, and then we can leave the other one, and just the time frame for applications when it comes to business case kits for those stakeholders that assist the communities. Thank you.
So just before we continue, I saw Member Van Minnen's hand. Okay, she's fine. Please go ahead.
I think I'll start with the last question, but there is no time frame. So it's not as if you need to submit it by a certain date, otherwise you forfeit. It depends on the strength of the business case, and then we'll fund it. So the leave for the outer areas, we have municipal leave outside of the law enforcement officers that we have outside of the metro. I think last year we went to a graduation where we in Robertson, there were 30 that were graduated, and then in Machikama. So we do provide those, extend those services also to the municipalities outside of the Western Cape. I think Machikama had 22, Robertson had 30. It depends on the intake, but we do have those law enforcement officers also or safety officers that we deploy in those areas.
Colleagues, if there's anything else, keep in mind we have the formal questions process as well, and we can also discuss some of these things in future meetings. So with that note, let's continue with the legislative mandate and the APPs. Now, look, I've come out of an environment where there's a high work ethic. So colleagues, can I suggest, I'm just concerned, I am concerned, I don't want to suppress discussion. I am at the same time concerned about the time. Can I suggest anyone wants tea, that you just quietly fetch it, bring it inside here. We don't have public here. We can do it on that basis. And let's finish the presentation. I'm sure you also have commitments later on during the day. So is that fine? Are you going to strike? Go and strike. If colleagues, let's make it 5 minutes then. Okay. Colleagues, so yeah, we're at the end of our shop steward induced break. Let's just, yeah, we can get on time, on time. So yeah, let's just wait for the others and then we'll kick off. Yeah, strat plan amongst ourselves. Well, it's something. Look, I must just take advisement also in terms of the programming and all that kind of thing. But I think we will all agree on that. We are not pausing to warm up the coffee. That's not a colleagues. It's normally we won't. We'll finish our meals, everything outside. But if with everyone's permission, let's do a bit of a working exercise. Over to you, the legislative mandate.
Thanks so much, Chairperson. And Chair, this part covers the constitutional mandates and the other applicable acts, but then also the APP. As I've said, the APP is more the document that we've already submitted to the legislature, and we will have quarterly engagements on the APP deliverables in there. So I'm not going to go deep into the APP. I think the important thing is the constitutional mandates for this committee to understand what mandate the department has and also what mandate the committee has as it relates to policing. So firstly, the mandate of the department is vested in chapter 11 of the constitution, where we're responsible to determine the policing needs and priorities for the province. And there is a document that's been issued. I do not know whether it's been distributed to the committee, but I can ensure that we have a set of documents distributed. Did we submit it to the committee? The PNP, policing needs and priorities. Okay. Okay, but we have a document with the policing needs and priorities. I think it's an important document for this committee to have, and we'll forward that, Chairperson. It's a very recent document to monitor police conduct as per section 206, oversee the effectiveness and efficiency of police services, including receiving reports on the police service. We need to promote good relations. We assess the effectiveness of visible policing. We liaise with the cabinet member responsible, and as Minister has done, for policing with respect and crime and policing the province. And in that case, we're busy with the collaboration agreement that was initiated by Minister Mkhuna. We investigate and appoint a commission of inquiry as and when needed, and also consider and refer complainants to the IPID to monitor investigations. And we do monitor those investigations, Chairperson, and we have the report on a regular basis. We require the provincial commissioner to appear before the provincial. We can request the provincial commissioner, General Patekile, or any of his officials to appear before the provincial legislature or any of its committees to answer questions as per section 206. And I think that's important for this committee to note, that if there's a requirement for General Patekile or for any of its officials to appear, they are entitled to do so. And to receive, so it can be from the legislature itself, or it can be via the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety, to receive and consider the annual report on policing in this province, and then also to consider and institute appropriate proceedings within the provincial commissioner if the provincial executive has lost confidence in that provincial commissioner. So the PC chairperson can be recalled, or there can be a vote of no confidence in the provincial commissioner should our cabinet, our provincial cabinet, our provincial executive deem it as such. Okay, The next one focus on the other applicable legislation, obviously the Constitution of the Western Cape, the Western Cape Community Safety Act, and then the Civilian Secretariat for Police and Service. Now, this act gives effect to Section 208 of the Constitution, where we mandated to establish and promote partnerships, manage the enhancements of community safety structures, neighborhood watches, CPFs, and provide guidance to community police forums and associated structures to facilitate the proper function. And I've indicated in our ministerial priority that we will be focusing on that. And then there's a list of other ones, Chairperson: control of access to public premises, which is our buildings, also minimum information security standards, that's standard for every department, private security industry regulations, because we're dealing with the securities also, and we also appoint security firms. The Liquor Act 59 of 2003, and then also the Western Cape Liquor Act 4 of 2008, Liquor Products Act, and then the Western Cape Government Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety Plan, so 2004-5. So those are generally the documents that we manage and that we adhere to, Chairperson. Just in terms of the Liquor Authority, the Liquor Authority falls under reports to this department. We have the Western Cape Liquor Authority, and the comment that was made of underage youngsters being in a Sabine, if that is a license liquor outlet, we can report them to the Liquor Authority to send the inspectors here at any time and to go and see, and the license can withdrawn. There are also discussions, and we're also doing joint planning with the Western Cape Liquor Authority, and they also have initiatives to improving safety. The amendment of the Western Cape Liquor Act, we will be having amendments to that coming through. The one is the minimum pricing that's going to come into effect, but that is a process that will come through all the oversight committees and the committees before it even goes to the legislature. Chair, I then just want to go through our programs, and as I said, I'm going to run through it briefly. We have 4 programs. The first one is administration, and that is more the program where we deal with finance, communication, strategy, the head of department, and the ministerial office. But also in that one, we have the transfer payment that we make to the Western Cape Police Ombudsman, and then also the Liquor Authority. So those matters are being dealt with within that specific program. And as you can see, we need to publish the amendment to the liquor regulations, inspector fees, and then also we need to report these reports to be compiled on the review of the Western Cape Liquor Act. Still under administration, that is just our financial management. Chair, I must acknowledge this team, this oversight committee will be responsible for our department, but I must commend and put on the record that our finance team and our strategy team, for the 16th year in a row, we have an unqualified audit report which is unmatched in the country, to having 16 unqualified audit reports. I did say to the CFO that it makes our minister's job that much easier coming into a department where she does not have to deal with the governance issues and the financial issues, because we've got a strong foundation. So minister comes in and add the value with the value add initiatives within the department. The compliance, the improved governance practices, and the department over the entity. So once again, compliance to the PFMA. There's quite a few things that we need to do there in terms of the APP, the operational reports, the reports of the Liquor Authority. And as I said, these things will be ventilated and reported on quarterly in terms of our quarterly performance reporting to the Standing Committee. Program 2 is our Provincial Secretariat Services. Now, they provide oversight over the conduct, effectiveness, and efficacy of law enforcement agencies. So you'll see there our output indicators, number of ministers and members of Executive Council meetings. And colleagues, at the end of this process, after I've gone through everything, you will notice that most of our indicators at this stage speaks to number of reports, number of meetings, number of, and not necessarily having impact indicators. And that is what Minister has brought to the department now. The discussion that we had before that is trying to change the narrative where we're just going through the motions of compliance and reporting. So this is the in-flight APP that we have, but we are changing some of these things as we go along. Program 2 we 2.2, we have policy and research where we do our reporting, the policing needs priority plan that I've submitted, and also different reports that we have when we go to the police stations. Monitoring and evaluation, another unit that are doing M&E, assessing the number of implementations of the of IPID, number of assessments of the compliance and implementation of the Domestic Violence Act, and the number of police stations assessed. You'll see last year they've got 151, but this year it's 150. But in essence, we have 152 stations. Safety promotion, number of safety social crime prevention programs implemented. And once again, the members was asked, so you're saying numbers, but what's the implication? So Chair, understand that this program was drafted, this plan was drafted and submitted in February already. We are changing the narratives by adding some new initiatives to the program into the department, and also revising some of the plans that we already have, given the ministerial priorities that's been highlighted going earlier. Community policing relationships, with this once again deal with the community safety forums, the community policing forums, the neighborhood watches, and how we engage them and the different assessments and support that we provide to them. Provincial policing functions, this is where we focus on the number of the law enforcement. And here, once again, as you can see, it's number of operational monitoring reports compiled for law enforcement. Does not say much to us. So a member will ask me, so what does it mean? At this stage, it's a report. And we need to change that, and we need to change the indicator. So for this year, this is what we have. But for the next year, we'll change it drastically. And with the guidance of this committee, we will change it drastically, because our next strategic plan and annual performance plan has to come through this committee. And as I said, we will be changing it, and you can be assured that there will be significantly different indicators in terms of what we'll be measuring. We will not just be measuring reports. It will be what is the outputs that we want to deliver, and specifically the impact. Then we've got the one on the Western Cape Police Ombudsman, number of reports on SAP service delivery complaints received, status and the status thereof, and the number of annual performance reports. Once again, same situation where there's not much coming out of it. And then program 4 is security management, and this is the program that deals with our provincial buildings and our structures and securities. Program 4.1 is the program support, and then program 4.2 deals with the provincial security provisioning, and program 4.3 deals with security advisory services, where we provide departments with advice on occupational health and safety, the risks within the department, and the different the number of engagements that we have with those departments. Chair, and then our budget. We have a budget of 763 million, of which 360 million is for the LEAP program. That goes to the city via transfer payment. The Liquor Authority gets 61.1, and then a compensation of employees is 173 million. So a large chunk of that funding is going to those three expenditure items. And then lastly, that is just the structure. We have a vacancy as a chief director for management support. That post will not be filled soon, because we have the challenge, not the challenge, we have a provincial initiative with our organizational design unit within the Department of the Premier, who is assessing all the smaller departments and the need for a chief director's post there. And then we also have one of our chief directors, David Kutsia. He injured himself very seriously in March, so he's on extended sick leave. He was in a cycling accident since March, and that's why I was asked to act. And then the rest of the post is one more post, Director Crime Prevention Center. That one is vacant. And then we have the acting head of department post, which the minister is in the process of filling. Oh, we have gone through interviews. When I say we, the department has gone through interviews. I've not been part of that panel or been interviewed. I've not applied for the post, and as we've agreed, and I'm here to make sure that the department gets the strategy part right, go through the MTech process, and then put a good process and platform in place for the next HOD that comes in and drive the department forward. It was something that was raised by our standing committee also, Chairperson, the concern of the lack of an HOD. But I think the department is, I won't say reasonably stable, it's quite stable. There's a lot of highly intelligent, highly in a very productive workforce. It's just the focus that we are trying to change the department from moving towards the compliance-based reporting in your annual performance report to more impactful reporting, and also that your deliverables are focused more on outcomes and impact on the community rather than just having the number of reports, having the number of meetings, having the number of assessments with no inputs. As I've indicated right at the beginning, when we've explained to General Patakili that our assessments of his police stations will be value add, and then when you make a recommendation, we should make recommendations that we can implement because we want to change and we want to improve service. He started understanding what it is that we're trying to do, and that we're not here to blame and to whoop and to, it's about collaboration, working. And see, if this department cannot foster a strong culture of collaboration, and we're just whooping SAPS and we're whooping City of Cape Town and everybody else, then we will be failing in our job. And I think that's where we have the best minister to do that, to just forge that relationship. What do you call it when you take the unarmed people? So minister has got the ability to unarm people and make them understand that we're coming to work together.
Order, colleagues, order.
No. It's in the sense of people putting their guard up and making sure that they don't go on the attack. I'm meant it more in that space. So, Chair, that is the presentation from my side. I'm open to any question, but I'll go back to that one. I'm sure there might be some questions on that specific slide on the constitutional merits.
Any additions by the Department of the Minister? Okay, then we're going to start on that side. Let's have hands. Questions on the legislative mandate and the annual performance plan. Mr. Member Boyson, I see Member Kasim, I see Member Van Minnen. Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, once again, it's just an acknowledgement from me. I must say that I've never heard of a liquor oversight visit. It's always police stations, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised because there are very huge liquor outlets, from where we come from in our constituencies, and some are very notorious. But it's just that I didn't even think of, it would be or it can be part and parcel, of some of our statutory work or so. So is there generally a different approach to liquor outlets, Chairperson, versus police stations? Because every time we open our mouths, we go for police stations. We're not happy with this, but now that I'm going through this, it's a pleasant surprise.
Member Kasim.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just have two questions. The first one is related to crime on schools. Can the department provide stats or data showing the number of murders, rapes, or gender-based violence incidents, particularly on schools, from 2019 to 2024? If there is any programs in terms of that as well, gender-based violence and rape, and a lot of these students come to schools. They come from backgrounds where they've got violent. Let me just put this. Oh, sorry. They come from a background which often has gender-based violence and stuff like that in the family. So do you have stats on that as well? How do you work with the students on the schools as well? And then the other one is based on the stats. Is there a reason why the department is not doing their own research in getting these stats instead of waiting for national to give the crime stats? Or is there any plans on the department doing their own research on crime stats in the Western Cape? Thank you.
Member Van Minnen.
Thank you. Two questions. One is really more of a comment. The issue of the vacancies is a concern. I don't know how long the vacancies have been there. You mentioned the one with Mr. Kutsia, but certainly when one looks at the structure, it seems to be a lot of very key positions that are vacant. So I would be interested in an update on when that is likely to be filled with people who are not acting. No offense to anyone who is, but in terms of permanent appointments. My second question is more of a comment, really. So there's a very broad mandate, but it's very much a mandate to evaluate, to measure, to liaise, to look. And it strikes me as being a watchdog, essentially, that can bark but hasn't actually got any teeth. Now, I know that devolution, as we've said, is the element in the room that needs to be looked at. And there has certainly been the Khayelitsha Commission, and there's now a good working relationship with General Patekile. But in terms of if there is a problem with policing in the province, and it's not necessarily to do with the people on the ground. I mean, it's very often to do with the structure of SAPS, with the national minister, that kind of thing. We're talking about the 12% police officers that are needed in the province. What can the department actually do to try to enforce what needs to happen in the Western Cape to actually change? It's good and well to liaise, but have you actually at this point got any power to actually enforce other than another commission? Thanks.
Over to the department and the minister. Yeah, no, your hand was down. You won't strike again, but I'll give you the chance.
In respect to vacant positions. And as you are busy working on your priorities and so on, and we certainly need stable and functioning structure. Therefore, in as much as she posed the question, but I want to insist that such vacant positions should be filled as soon as possible, right? But for me, it's not enough to pose the question, but also advise and give guidance at this committee. But in doing so, the filling of such vacant positions should be reflective of the Western Cape. I look at the structure, in respect to demographics, right? I am happy with respect to gender. I'm not happy in respect to the national question. An attempt must be made to balance the outlook of the structure. And you make a point about somewhere in your report, which is obvious about, and I'm happy with constitutional mandates. And I take this outline, Chair, as one form of an induction to say, look, these are part of the issues we should look at, in executing our tasks, performing our duties. But there is this important aspect about IPID. Look, police behavior or whatever complaints are reported to IPID. But where are the complaints and behaviors of law enforcement from across municipalities reported to? And I was once made to understand that to an ombudsman. You look at the ombudsman vis IPID. Maybe this may need legislative change for law enforcement agencies, law enforcement officers, also to report to IPID, to be reported to IPID in this instance. I remember the case which was involving the police and the metro officer some years ago here, in respect to attending to it, was one sketchy matter. So that's an issue which I need clarity on, and what should be done, or what is the difference between the IPID capacity versus the ombudsman, and how about elevating this instead of reporting to an ombudsman, but report to IPID? that case is reported to IPD. And let me leave it there, Chair, because I was not ready to, at the time I was still working on my notes. But in the interest of time, you're going to benefit on this. Thanks.
Right, over to you.
Member Boyson, the Western Cape Liquor Authority, because it falls under this department, can also be summoned to the specific committee. Oversight that you perform at SAPS also falls under, and is similar to the oversight that you're performing over the POX of the Liquor Authority. So yes, if you want to do with the Liquor Authority, with the inspectors, do visits, that's part of the committees, will fall within the committee's mandate. So I'm glad to hear it's a pleasant surprise, because I do think it's an area that we need to focus on a bit stronger. So the stats on crimes at schools. So, Member Kasim, I will obtain that stats from the education department, then I will forward it. I see I've got a list of things and stats that I need to provide to you, but I do not have those stats readily available, but we'll make a note and then we'll provide that specific stats. And then the vacancies that's concerned. Vanessa, would you like to respond on the vacancies specifically? And
Thank you, Chair. I can respond on the HOD's vacancy. I had a discussion with the DG this morning, so the HOD's last final candidates interview will be not this Monday, the next Monday. What I think it's the 26th. Yeah, the 26th will be the last interview. So if the panel decided this candidate or the candidates do not fit, it's not fit for purpose, if I can use that word, we can go headhunting. So that is where we are now. I would like to be the HOD appointed before our acting HOD is leaving. I think he's until the end of October. If there's a problem, they will extend, but I would like to have the HOD appointed at least. It's very crucial for this department. I cannot comment at this stage on the other two vacancies. I don't know if you've got any other. Yeah, thank you.
so the two vacancies, as I've indicated, the one is related to the chief director, and as you've correctly indicated, it's a chief director's level. So the one that we have here is where we have the chief director responsible for the management support, and that chief director is vacant and is now reporting directly to the acting HOD. But it's because there's a process underway within the province where organizational design is looking at departments such as local government, economic development, environmental affairs, to see whether that post is actually justified at chief director level, or whether those two directors should not directly report back into the department. So there's a process underway there. David Gutsia, it's a very sad situation though, but he is booked off 6 until the end of September, and then he will return. So that one we will having back very soon, and then he can resume his duty. And then the director's post, that's something that we need to get approval from the DG and the Premier's office. But as per the recommendation, we'll push that one so that we can get that one approved. The HOD post, Minister has covered. And I am here in a temporary position, and I've made it clear to the team also, so that I do not harvest any intentions, or that I do not have any intentions to apply for the post, because I do think we need somebody that can really drive this process going forward. So, Minister, I understand my situation. We've had some discussions on that also. But whilst I'm here, I'll do the best of my ability to make sure that we have this department operating at a very high level, and that we deliver value to our citizens.
There's a follow-up from Member Kasim.
Yes, sorry. I think the question on the stats has not been answered. I asked why, as the department in the previous and now as well, not made it your duty to do oversight to find the stats that are still outstanding, and then also do you have plans to do your own research on crime stats?
Okay, so that's an easy one to respond to. So the stats on the crime, Minister said that we want the stats from SAPS on a monthly basis so that we can implement actions. In the absence of SAPS giving us stats, we take our forensic pathology unit, we take their stats, and that we get on a weekly basis. So we do have our own stats, but we need to make sure that we reconcile that with the SAP stats, but we get SAP stats not on a frequent enough basis, and that's why we need to get that more frequently. In the absence of that, we work on our forensic pathology services, and that's why I could say that last week we had 115 homicides in the 1 week. Chairperson, I just want to see whether there's a question on the iPad. So the difference between iPad and the ombudsman is that iPad investigates complaints against the police officers itself. So it's the internal disciplinary unit. And the ombudsman relates to matters that's not been resolved by SAPS itself. So it's two different things. So one is the people working there, and the other one is the cases that's been logged. And if there's the point was made, maybe there's a requirement for the change in the law. Yes, if that is something that comes from this platform, I think this is the appropriate platform to push for something like that, Chairperson. And then also whether the ombudsman or IPAD has got the jurisdiction over municipal law enforcement. Yes, they do have jurisdiction over the municipal law enforcement also. Okay.
Right. Colleagues, then we're going to move on to the next item, which is possible oversight meetings. The department and the minister, you are more than welcome to continue sitting here, but you are excused for that section. We're nearly at the end of the meeting, but can I just say, I certainly found this a very good, and I use the term kickoff meeting, just to also see what's front of mind for members, to see where the department is, to see where your constraints are. As I sit here, and I deliberately did not ask questions and wanted to listen, but it sounds to me like there's lots of very, very fertile territory to collaborate while agreeing and disagreeing on items like devolution, for example. You know, we're going to differ, but there's far more than that. There's a potential here for a meeting of minds for all of us to fulfill our function here. So good luck with the hard work. We know it's a work in progress, and then you're moving into a new space, not just in policing, but also in terms of your budget constraints. At the same time, we will play a vigorous role from our side in terms of our constitutional mandate. And I would like to, on that note, say that going forward, I would certainly like to see reports and information reach us at least the Friday before a committee meeting to give us the opportunity to properly interrogate the information. At the end of the day, we have a role to fulfill. Having said that, I could hear from your description of timelines. It is a bit of beginning of the term jitters, but we will tighten that up going forward. Thank you very much. And then we will continue with the rest of the next item just now.
Okay. Chair, from our side, just thank you very much for the members. And as I've indicated, whilst the members has got an oversight role, we take that oversight role of the members very seriously, and we take it oversight plus guidance and direction, because that's important that we get that guidance and direction sometimes, and then taking it back into organization. So we do not take the sessions lightly. We actually value these sessions, because we do not just see it as a session where we're going to get to ask the questions. We know that when the questions are asked, there's reason to it. And we all want to improve the safety of our citizens outside, and it's important that we all work together. So thanks so much, Chairperson, and to the members for the questions and the way it was asked. Okay. To our Minister for sitting here through this whole session. Thanks, Minister.
Colleagues, the next item on the agenda, I've put there, not with the idea of putting anyone in a corner now to come up with a list of oversight visits. It's actually, the intention is that we listen to the reports, listen to the presentation. We're welcome to make suggestions here, but the idea was that each member then make a list of items. I'm to use an example, Member Stevens, and I'm not suggesting it's going to be your suggestion. If there's an issue around liquor outlets and whether that's a driver of crime, that could be a one. Or for example, I mentioned, remember Kasim, and I happen to have a background, not in running drug houses, but in, in trying to prevent it. In my past life as a ward councillor, that could be the kind of thing we want to look at as oversight. So what I wanted to propose is that I suggest a deadline of a week. We give ourselves a week. Each one of the members, let's make it 12 o'clock the 20th, that each member send me a list of, let's say, 1 to 3 possible oversight visits. Doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do those 3 or all 3 of them, or whatever the case might be. But if each one of the members have a list, we can look at where the commonalities are. And there's a couple of things that I picked up already that's going to be useful going forward. But if you can come up with your suggestions, we'll bring it then to the committee for a resolution where we actually discuss it and we decide what we're going to do. But colleagues, I think we can all agree that this is an incredibly involved portfolio. Now, what I find it very encouraging, we all acknowledge it's not simply a policing matter. There's transversal issues in terms of education, in terms of social development, arts, sports, and culture. There's a number of to quote. Remember, I'm going to. You must really teach me to pronounce your surname correctly. It's my limitation. The member with that surname, Member Benson. But anyway, no. I must improve. I'll go into practice it till I get it right. But colleagues, there was a question there raised, for example, what's the driver? I think you used the word forces. What is it? It's not just the policing component. It's not just the stopping somebody in the street and arresting them, or whatever the case might be. What's really behind it? And I think if we so let's apply our thinking to this. I'm very comfortable with a disagreement, colleagues. We don't learn from people that we agree with, and there's going to be times where we differ. But at the same time, one thing that I think we can all share here is we want to destroy crime. We want to destroy the impact that it has on committees. We want to change that. So that's really in that spirit that I ask you to. We can discuss it now. Alternatively, let's go back, think about the presentations that you've received. Welcome to contact me as well if you want to brainstorm ideas. I'll share or maybe I should share it right now. If you don't have it on the database, you're welcome to contact me as well. But the firm proposal that I'm making is that we have 1 to 3 oversight ideas from each member, and that the deadline is 12 o'clock p.m. midday, the 20th of August, and then we'll put it then in the next meeting we will put that together into a vigorous oversight program. Colleagues, does that have your agreement? For that would be, my understanding is until the end of the financial year, next year, because that would be the budgetary cycle. Yeah. So colleagues, in that spirit, let me just check with the procedural officer. Is there anything outstanding that I'm missing?
Thank you, Chair. Members, perhaps not just oversight visits only, but if there are any content matters also. If there's an opportunity to do an oversight visit, have a briefing at the site, or whatever the suggestion is, but there might also be a need to have a more content-based oversight visit in one of our venues here. Yeah, and also there might be a few things that crop up, but that would depend on the department or the entities. Like the committee is responsible for appointing or shortlisting board members. So that's not something we can always predict unless it's the end of the term. But sometimes there are vacancies that crop up and we get the correspondence we need to shortlist. So that would then sort of influence the committee program, because those entities need to be capacitated to do the work. Thank you, Chair.
Let's maybe just to, because it also popped into my head, let's, if it's possible, if it's appropriate, if you don't mind sending us even if it's a paragraph just outlining the different types of oversight we are talking about. So one would be, for example, the oversight we go somewhere. I'm sure all of us have constituencies we also want to look at. Where we physically go and look at a situation. Then there's the kind of oversight that delves into the working of the department and the kinds of call it, that's what I would imagine is what you refer to as content-wise. And we can also add to that, there's a number of national ministries, other departments, people that we might want to have in front of the committee, correctional service, the prosecuting authority. I'm not suggesting we will be able to get all of them packed in here in a crowd, but let's put together this initial wish list and we'll fine tune it in our next meeting. And again, any interaction, any call it informal interaction you want to have with me, more than welcome as well. Colleagues, then with that note, I'm concluding the meeting. Thank you very much. Colleagues, the only reason I'm a chairperson here is because this is the only place outside of my house where I have authority. So it's